Welcome to my channel.
I saw my family slaughtered, my own neck pierced by a sword. But then, I woke up, a child again with only a week to live. Can I rewrite history? Can I stop the impending massacre?
Seoho, I want you to take the merchant group leader position instead.
That's your rightful position as the eldest child. I'm the youngest of the family. SOIT doesn't make sense for me to take that position.
You are much more talented in this field than I am. You were the biggest reason that we were able to become one of the 3 greatest merchant groups when we used to be just a small one.
But I like not having responsibilities and lounging about. If I become the merchant group leader, then I'll have to attend dinners with business partners and play along with their bullshit.
Yeah.
He simply nodded, accepting my refusal without another word, or so I thought. The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken weight. Huh?
He sighed a quiet, resigned sound and told me, all right.
He turned his back to me then, the full weight of his decision settling.
Let's do as you wish then, Seoho, he said, his voice heavy with an acceptance I didn't deserve.
The world outside the family estate was vibrant, free, and that was all I craved. But then the screams started. I watched in horror as the guards, the very men who had protected me since childhood, fell one by one. My own elder brother, lying broken. Everyone I knew, from Mr. Jang to the Silver Wind Squad leader, even the Sunset Pavilion leader. All of them gone, their lives extinguished before my very eyes. My bloodied hands trembled as the full horror of the massacre washed over me. And then I saw him, the monster who had brought this devastation, Namgoong Kang, leader of the White Heaven Merchant Group. He stood there, a predator amongst the ruins, his silhouette framed by the flickering flames of our burning home.
It's a shame to have to kill you.
Meet Namgoong Kang, leader of the White Heaven Merchant Group, and the villain who massacred Seoho's family.
Isn't the White Heaven Merchant Group under the Murim Alliance? Is this truly acceptable?
Meet Seoho, the protagonist, a merchant who reincarnated into his younger self to prevent a massacre.
The higher-ups have heard about how you have been getting in the way of our business. That's why you should have stayed in your lane. All this just for money, Tusk.
All this just for money. You're the ones that lost to us because you guys were less skilled. And that's all you have to say after doing all this? How ridiculous.
His eyes narrowed, a muscle twitching in his jaw. What? He growled.
Have you gone deaf? I shot back, my defiance burning brighter than the flames around us.
With a furious roar, Namgoong Kang lunged, his sword a blur of steel and dark energy. The blade found its mark, piercing through me with brutal force.
A ragged cough escaped my lips as I stumbled, my guard completely down.
It's because you are that dangerous, he hissed, that we are taking down your merchant house.
My strength failed me. I crumpled to the ground, the life draining from my body. Was everything I had ever done, was it all for nothing? Did the lives of merchants like us hold no weight in the grand, brutal scheme of the Murim world? As my vision faded, I felt a deep, aching regret. If only I'd started learning martial arts when I was younger. If only our merchant group had expanded further, made more powerful allies. Then a voice, distant, yet familiar, called out my name.
Young master. But you can't be falling asleep.
What was going on? My eyes fluttered open, still heavy with confusion. Was I still alive?
I told you to look over the years, harvests, and summarize.
There, right in front of me, was Yu Soak, his face a mask of exasperated disapproval. He just smacked me on the head with a rolled-up scroll, a familiar, stinging sensation. My head throbbed, but beneath the pain I felt my own heartbeat, strong and steady. If I was alive, then this man, this furious, lecturing man, he had to be real. He let out a dramatic sigh, rubbing his temples as if I was the biggest headache he'd ever faced. Then I felt it again. A sharp, familiar thwack to the back of my head, this time with the other asterisk end of the scroll. This feeling, this particular brand of exasperated affection and disciplinary action, it was unmistakable. This wasn't some random stranger. It was Yu So-ak, the chief of internal affairs, my strict but surprisingly soft-hearted mentor. He leaned in close, his expression a comical mix of frustration and something almost like fondness. He then tapped his scroll against my forehead, not harshly, but with clear emphasis.
In all my years of teaching the 3 young masters, no one has ever tried to submit a report claiming a wild cow was a deer. You are very, very special. Now, to your room and sit facing the wall.
I just stood there, dumbfounded, as he pointed a stern finger towards the door. Soon, I found myself sitting on a thinking chair, staring blankly ahead. Why was I being scolded by Yu So-ak, the chief of internal affairs, instead of being dead? My mind drifted back to the last time he'd been so theatrical about my work. It was about a report on last year's harvest supply, the very first task he'd ever given me. Is this what you call an analysis? A wild cow would write something better than this. He'd bellowed, then added, "Thanks for the trash I can use as fertilizer in my back garden, I guess." I shook my head, trying to clear the fog. My personal guard, Yo Youngam, was kneeling nearby, ever vigilant. He looked exactly as I remembered him, strong and dependable.
How old am I right now?
Yo Youngam looked at me, a worried furrow in his brow, wondering if my head had finally gone soft.
Master, yesterday was your 15th birthday.
15. 15, he'd said.
But I'm 39.
Yo Youngam stared at me with a concern that was almost comedic.
Are you sure we shouldn't call a physician to look after you? A very good one for mental health.
I stared at my hands, still unable to believe what I was seeing.
Supple skin, not a single blister. Am I really back to being my younger self?
I pinched my cheeks hard, just to prove to myself this wasn't some dream.
It hurts.
But the pain was a real, sharp reminder of something else entirely. I was dead. All the memories from my death were so vivid, so horribly clear. My family lying dead in front of me. Then Namgoong Kang, the leader of the White Heaven merchant group, drove his sword straight through me. It was swift, brutal, and utterly final. I clutched at my neck, feeling the life drain, the world fading to black. But now I knew it was all real.
I've come back to the past. But the massacre did happen.
The memory of that fatal wound made me grasp at my own throat, a phantom pain in my younger body.
I won't let it happen again.
My past life, every painful detail, was still perfectly clear in my mind.
I know how to overcome those obstacles. I'll use that knowledge. We can stand up against the Murim Alliance.
Then a horrifying thought struck me.
My 15th birthday.
I counted the days, the realization hitting me with a cold dread. This was catastrophically bad.
There's only a week remaining until that incident, Yo Youngam. We need to do something without anyone else knowing.
Yo Youngam listened intently, his expression grave. Meanwhile, far away, someone else was making their own grim plans. A shadowy figure lit a small scroll with a flickering flame, the smoke curling ominously. He then sealed it tightly within a metal tube.
Are you sure about this? Why wouldn't I be? Seo Ho has begun learning the business. I heard that Yo Youngam is also a pretty skilled martial master. I'm asking if you can really do this stealthily.
The shadowy figure, cloaked and hunched, gripped his cane tightly, a picture of frailty that belied the venom in his words. He scoffed, utterly convinced of my supposed weakness, seeing me as nothing more than a sickly child. Yo Youngam was also a part of his calculations, but the figure claimed to have a plan for him. He chillingly added that any witnesses to his treachery would simply be eliminated. But you once served your masters, a voice from off-panel challenged him. The shadowy figure just laughed, utterly unmoved by the reminder of his past loyalties. He believed our family was simply fated to die early, a grim prophecy he intended to fulfill. In his twisted mind, by ending my suffering, he was doing me a favor, and I should be grateful. He truly believed I was merely waiting for death, completely ignorant of the fate I had already cheated. Back in my room, Yo Youngam watched me, a silent guardian.
Young master, he began, his voice low and serious.
I knew what he was getting at, and there was no time for subtlety anymore. I met his gaze, my expression grim, and told him we were the ones who needed to strike first. Yo Youngam watched me, unwavering, waiting for me to elaborate on this drastic shift. I gestured, emphasizing my point. We needed to aim for something very specific. Our target, I explained, was the best miracle medicine in all of Zhangyuan. Yo Youngam's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of surprise in his usually stoic expression. He looked at me, then away, clearly processing the enormity of what I was asking. A single drop of blood, stark on the wooden floor, was all the proof I needed. I held elder brother, his lifeblood seeping out, as he begged me to escape this burning hell. But where would I go without him, without any of them? He told me he had lived for this very moment, to protect me. He said even if he died here, it would be enough. I remembered him saying I'd always listened to him since I was young. Was I going to make his death meaningless now? He weakly tried to push me away, to force me to flee. He said this was the only way to beat them, to save me. My name, Seoho, was the last thing I heard him whisper before the world went dark. But I couldn't just stand by and let it happen again. I had to prevent this future. I knew what I was asking for. If I couldn't even trust my own family, who could I trust? One person, I decided. My loyal guard, Yo Youngam, stood there, his face etched with worry, but I pressed on.
In the near future, I'm going to die.
So what are we looking for?
Right here.
I explained we needed a miracle medicine, something with pure, icy yin energy comparable to a 10,000-year-old spiritual herb.
What is that? A miracle medicine that will cure you of what?
Yo Youngam looked utterly baffled, and I couldn't blame him. I pointed to my chest, where the true danger lay hidden. It was called the mysterious dragon star physique, a unique condition where I was born with extremely strong yin energy. But for men, that yin energy collides with their yang, slowly but surely, killing them from the inside out. This condition, if left untreated, would kill me before I even reached my 20s. Yo Youngam stood there silent, his face a mask of shock and worry. I could barely stand the cold, my body aching, a sharp reminder of the illness taking root deep inside. This was my secret, one I had to share if I truly wanted to survive.
I don't know who you are, or what you've done to get this far.
He launched himself into the air, a blur of motion, determined to find what I needed.
I can't say I'll become stronger than him, but I'll be as strong as I can. In this life it's so high up, I'm so annoyed. Don't die for my sake.
I watched him go, a pang of desperation mixed with hope in my chest. A few days later. The change was remarkable. A healthy glow had returned to my face, and the chronic fatigue had lifted.
Good morning, Master. You look like a completely different person. What? Yo Youngam stammered, his eyes wide with a mix of shock and admiration. Lately, he continued, pointing at me, I feel like there's more to you.
He trailed off, clearly searching for the right words to describe the sudden, inexplicable shift in my demeanor. Then, as if struck by a bolt of lightning, his face lit up with a grin.
Now he's like one of the most beautiful men out there. Yeah, he declared, eyes practically sparkling with pride, a little idol in his mind.
I just offered a wry smile, finding his enthusiasm both amusing and a little embarrassing. It was true, the change was remarkable. A healthy glow had returned to my face, and the chronic fatigue had lifted. Yo Youngam then quickly shifted, reporting on the successful acquisition of the miracle medicine and the progress of the reconstruction efforts. He handed me a stack of neatly organized documents, all pertaining to the various ongoing projects. We sat together, reviewing the figures and plans, the smooth operation a testament to my past life's experience. I gave a subtle wink to the others, a silent command for them to maintain the facade of my sudden, genius-level competence. They nodded conspiratorially, understanding the delicate balance we were trying to strike. Yu So-ak, my strict but surprisingly soft-hearted mentor, watched me go, his expression unreadable.
Well, as long as he's healthy. If he gets sick again, I'm killing him.
The next day, I was back in the finance pavilion, its ornate roof a familiar sight. Mr. Zhang, a member of the finance pavilion, stared at me, his eyes wide with disbelief.
How did you manage all of this in 2 hours?
Meet Mr. Zhang, member of the finance pavilion.
You really did all this properly. The finance pavilion's work.
I just blinked at him, trying to look modest and slightly confused.
It wasn't all that difficult.
I should have pretended harder to be an amateur. But honestly, I'd done this kind of thing in my past life for so long, and my improved condition just accelerated everything.
Master, this might come off as rude. But even the smallest work in the finance pavilion should be done with utmost care. The flow of finances in a merchant group is akin to blood in a human's veins. If information were to leak out, what do you think would happen?
Meet Yu So-ak, Seoho's mentor and chief of internal affairs. I just nodded respectfully, my expression thoughtful, as if truly absorbing his wisdom for the first time. Yu So-ak watched me with a gaze I couldn't quite decipher, a slight furrow in his brow. He turned, walking away from the finance pavilion, his posture rigid, as if processing something deeply unsettling.
There's no way someone like that could have done this work well.
He's thinking. He paused, a new resolve hardening his expression, turning back towards the pavilion.
I'll turn them in to the chief of internal affairs right now.
He looked at me with an intensity I hadn't seen before, asking if I was truly ready for the demands of internal affairs, if I could handle such a big deal.
Well, all right.
And with that, he gestured for me to follow, leading me deeper into the intricacies of the merchant house. His next words caught me off guard, a sudden shift in topic. He spoke of a ceremony for my elder brother. I watched him intently, my expression unwavering, my mind racing with the implications of his words. He gave me a direct, unwavering look, a silent command, no chickening out. Yu So-ak stared, his lecture fading, but a new glint of purpose flickered in his eyes. I'll personally teach you the ropes of internal affairs, Seoho. My eyes widened, a flicker of surprise I quickly masked. This man, my stern mentor, was offering to guide me through the intricate dance of the merchant house's most vital operations. I bowed deeply, accepting his challenge. Meanwhile, far away in the shadows, a hunched figure received news that sent a jolt of genuine shock through their cloaked form. Their initial assessment of me, of the easy target I was supposed to be, shattered into a million pieces. My rapid recovery, my sudden competence, it was an unwelcome surprise. They clenched a fist, the air around them growing heavy with a new, dark resolve. My unexpected strength had forced their hand. The game was changing, and they would adjust. Their plans, once so clear, were now being meticulously reshaped, becoming even more sinister. Then, just as I was about to turn away, a small, knowing smirk played on his lips. He wasn't just observing, he was calculating, and the intensity in his gaze was unsettling. And then I saw it, the almost imperceptible twitch of a muscle in his jaw, a subtle sign of frustration. He was muttering something under his breath, a low, almost inaudible sound. The shadowy figure, his face twisted in a silent snarl, stared intently at a glowing orb, clearly disturbed by what he saw. He slammed his fist down on the table, a sudden burst of anger that echoed through the silent room. The very air around him seemed to crackle with fury, the shadows deepening as his rage intensified. His subordinate, a cloaked figure, flinched back, clearly intimidated by the sudden outburst. The shadowy figure then turned, his face a mask of cold, calculating fury towards the cowering subordinate. He was no longer just surprised. He was genuinely infuriated by my unexpected resilience. His eyes narrowed, a dangerous glint in their depths, as he began to pace, his mind clearly working overtime. He hissed that this would only complicate things further, the words laced with a venomous frustration. I offered a respectful bow, a quiet confidence blooming within me. Days later, my recovery was complete, and I was back, moving with renewed vigor. Yo Youngam, ever observant, couldn't help but notice the change.
Master, you look like a different person. Your complexion is so much brighter.
I just smiled, a secret satisfaction warming me. The miracle medicine had worked its magic, and my vital energy was finally stable. Yo Youngam continued, reporting on the successful acquisition of the medicine and the smooth progress of the reconstruction. With my health restored, I threw myself into the finance pavilion, my past life's experience making short work of the complex ledgers. Mr. Zhang, from the finance pavilion, openly gawked at the speed of my work, his astonishment palpable. He couldn't fathom how I, the youngest master, had managed to oversee all the reconstruction finances and medicine acquisitions so quickly. I just offered a humble shrug, pretending it was all new to me, when in reality, I'd been running things like this for what felt like an eternity. I knew it from my past life, the memory sharp and cold in my mind. The horror that had ripped through my family, leaving only ashes and bodies. That was no accident. It was an arson meticulously planned by someone inside our own walls. To prevent it this time, to truly move against the shadowy figure, I needed absolute freedom to act as I pleased. But first, I had to change how my family saw me. The youngest son, always frail, always protected, that image had to die. I watched my elder brother, distant and formal, already a pillar of the merchant house. And then there was Jinho, my second older brother, whose gaze felt twisted by a jealousy I couldn't quite place. Our father arrived late, his apology curt and formal. His face was flushed, a clear sign of stress or anger, though he rarely showed it. He looked directly at me, reminding me that my sole focus, above all else, was the protection of our merchant group. I thought of my past self, sickly and kept from any real responsibility. I had to break free from the perception of being the family's sickly, useless burden, or all my knowledge would be for nothing. I knew what I had to do. I looked across the table at my elder brother, who sat with a distant, almost formal air. Then my gaze shifted to Jinho, my second older brother, whose expression always seemed twisted by a barely concealed jealousy. At last, the father arrived, offering a curt apology for his delay. His face was flushed, a clear sign of stress or anger, though he kept his tone even.
Nonsense.
He looked directly at me, reminding me that my sole focus, above all else, was the protection of our merchant group. I couldn't afford to be frail now. So I spoke up, requesting to take on the night duty, a responsibility I'd always been denied. Jinho immediately scoffed, dismissing my request as absurd given my past frailty.
What job could you possibly give him?
I met his challenge head-on, proposing a sparring match to prove my newfound capability. My father, his face etched with concern, immediately dismissed the idea, telling me to let it go. But I saw Jinho's face, a flicker of disbelief in his eyes that I, his frail younger brother, would even dare to challenge him. He just stood there, mouth agape, utterly stunned. It was almost too easy to read his thoughts. Me, fight him. It was the kind of arrogance I was used to. My father, seeing my stubbornness and Jinho's shock, let out a deep sigh. His shoulders slumped just a fraction, a silent concession. Beside me, I felt Yo Youngam tense, a low growl barely audible in his throat. But as he looked at my steady gaze, his own concern softened, replaced by a quiet trust. He chose to observe, to wait and see what plan I had in motion. The moment lingered in silence, charged with unspoken expectations. A heavy quiet settled over us. My father's face was indeed red, a clear sign of either stress or simmering anger. He took a long, slow breath, his gaze sweeping over us. Then he fixed his eyes on me, an intensity that made my stomach clench. His posture was unyielding, a testament to the burden he carried as the head of the house.
Is there something you want to say?
He told me to get a grip, his tone sharp. He said this kind of emotional display wasn't like me. and that it hadn't happened in this family. His voice was cold as he reminded me that my only focus should be protecting the merchant group. I met his gaze, my resolve hardening. I knew what I had to do. I took a step forward, ready to make my case. My gaze flickered to Jinho, my second brother, who just kept eating, oblivious to the storm brewing. Then the heavy door slid open, and the father stepped into the room.
You were born frail, so you never bore your share of responsibility.
His words, a familiar knife, cut deep, reminding me of the sickly child I'd once been. He looked right at me, his face still flushed with either anger or exhaustion. I knew what he expected. The family first, always, the survival of our house above all else. Taking a breath, I spoke. "Father, I request to take on night duty." Jinho froze, chopsticks suspended midair, a look of utter dismissal already forming. He set his bowl down with a quiet clang, his expression hardening. "Night duty," he scoffed, turning to face me fully, as if I'd just told a bad joke. He crossed his arms, leaning back, the picture of condescension.
With your current condition, that's absolutely impossible. Any other duty is fine, Seoho, but night duty, absolutely not, understood.
He punctuated his dismissive tone by tapping his chopsticks on the table, a clear sign of his impatience. But my gaze remained steady, holding his, refusing to back down.
Precisely, how do you intend to prove yourself?
Meet Jinho, Seoho's second older brother.
By sparring with you, Jinho.
His eyes widened slightly, then narrowed, a flicker of genuine surprise finally crossing his face. My father, who had been listening in silence, finally intervened, his face a mask of disapproval. He waved a dismissive hand, telling me to let the matter drop. But I wasn't done, not by a long shot.
What, is there something wrong with that?
Jinho's expression was a perfect blend of disbelief and arrogance. The idea that I, the family's sickly, useless burden, could ever challenge him was almost funny. My father let out a long, weary sigh, resigned to letting this ridiculous spectacle play out. I pressed my point. If I could stand against him, wouldn't that be enough? My hand clenched into a tight fist, resolve hardening in my eyes. I looked at my father, a silent plea for permission hanging in the air. He just looked away, his expression unreadable, a single bead of sweat trickling down his temple.
Let it go.
He addressed everyone, but his gaze lingered on me. I met his eyes, my determination unwavering. Jinho truly believed I had no chance, no hope against him. He just sat there, smug in his certainty.
Father.
My father finally relented, letting out a heavy sigh as he rubbed his temple. He saw no shame in letting me try, it seemed. Yo Youngem, my personal guard, watched me with an intensity that spoke of lingering worry. He was still thinking of my past frailty, no doubt. This spar must have seemed reckless. But I wasn't the same person anymore. I met his gaze, my own expression unwavering, trying to convey the certainty I felt.
Hi, Youngem.
My simple greeting, delivered with an easy smile, seemed to catch him off guard. He blinked, the tension in his shoulders easing just slightly.
You worried.
Youngem finally let out a small, almost imperceptible sigh. He knew me well enough to understand that I always had a plan, even if it wasn't obvious.
I'll watch and see for now.
And with that, he settled in, ready to observe what I was about to unleash.
My mentor, Yu Soak, decided to simply observe, letting the duel unfold.
A crowd had already gathered, their faces a mix of curiosity and apprehension, as Jinho and I stood poised for battle.
Whispers rippled through them, wondering what had possessed me and Jinho to suddenly engage in a duel. They couldn't believe my sudden confidence, questioning if I'd lost my mind.
Jinho, his face a mask of fury, lunged forward, a powerful punch aimed directly at me. But I wasn't the sickly boy he remembered. I moved, a blur of motion, easily evading his attack. He swung again, a relentless barrage of blows, but each one met empty air. I ducked and weaved, my movements surprisingly fluid for someone considered frail. Jinho continued his aggressive assault, completely focused on me.
He roared, calling me a bastard who didn't know his place, his voice raw with years of suppressed resentment.
His hand tightened around the hilt of his sword, ready to strike again.
He believed I'd been given too much simply for being the youngest, thinking the entire world revolved around me. Today, as your older brother.
He moved, an aggressive blur, his sword already half drawn from its sheath.
I'll teach you the ways of the world.
Haha, Jinho couldn't take his eyes off me. Was I really that fascinating? He attacked again, a powerful, sweeping strike meant to end the duel, but I simply shifted, a phantom in his path.
Oh.
His mind flashed back to a memory. A younger, sickly me, with our father, who gently told Jinho he had to take good care of me in the future. He remembered being told to act like an older brother, to protect the frail youngest son. His father. He looked at me, a question in his eyes, wondering if he was truly doing what he was told. Jinho hesitated, his sword still drawn, his face a complex mask of anger and confusion. He couldn't understand why I was suddenly so different. Then, with a sickening crack, the impact came, sending me sprawling to the ground. I barely registered the pain, instead questioning the true level of martial arts I had attained. Even a dragon sword user at the 12th level would have struggled with a blow like that. I pushed myself up, my body screaming in protest, but my mind was already racing. Jinho, seeing me rise, looked more confused than ever, his brow furrowed in disbelief. Yo Youngam, my personal guard, watched from the sidelines, a flicker of concern in his eyes. But I wasn't done yet. I prepared for his next strike, my vision tunneled, focused only on survival. Another sharp blow landed, and I cried out, the pain a jolt through my system. It was then, with strange clarity, that I realized I had only ever learned martial arts from reading. And this was my first attempt to dodge a real attack.
Reading, lucky enough to dodge. Is that damn bastard joking?
Jinho, unable to reconcile my words with my actions, gritted his teeth, his frustration palpable. He raised his sword again, intent to finish this now, his patience wearing thin. Jinho, now fully committed, launched himself forward, his sword a blur of steel aiming straight for me. I dodged again, a quick pivot, the air whistling where I'd been just a moment before.
Don't take Seoho's words so lightly. He would never offer a duel without thinking it through. He is the greatest genius of all time in the merchant house.
Jinho lunged, then spun, his attacks relentless, each one carrying the full weight of his frustration. Yet I continued to evade him, a dance of near misses, my movements surprisingly fluid for someone so sickly. The onlookers murmured, astonished that I, who could barely keep my balance days ago, was holding my own against a first-rate master like Jinho for so long.
If he learns under a proper master, I can't wait to see how much he'll grow.
Jinho's eyes, fixed on me with an almost obsessive intensity, betrayed a growing desperation. His face contorted in a snarl of disbelief.
Why aren't my blows landing? I heard he was the greatest genius in the history of the merchant house. So, is he going to take the title of the merchant house's greatest martial genius from me as well? You bastard!
Jinho, still burning with frustration, launched himself at me again, his blows still failing to land. He closed in, a strange worry etched on his face, though I couldn't fathom why. He held out a small bottle, a desperate urgency in his eyes. I could only stare back, utterly bewildered.
Young Master Seoho, the Chief of External Affairs will be teaching you martial arts. Pardon me, but I want to be taught by you. Jinho, your brother is very sick. You need to concede so I can take care of your brother.
He said I was an older brother now, as if that explained the chaos around me. Suddenly, the world spun, then went dark, and I felt myself collapsing. Panicked medical staff swarmed, their urgent shouts barely registering. Jinho was there, tears streaming down his face, stammering apologies I couldn't understand. A medical expert confirmed my worst fear. Jinho had accidentally given me an elixir of pure yang energy. My hand, still clutching the empty vial, trembled uncontrollably. Jinho's face was a mask of utter despair, tears blurring his plea to the father. He'd only wanted me to get better faster. The father watched, his expression unreadable, as Jinho clung to his arm, devastated by my collapse.
Tell me, what is his condition?
He turned to the medical staff, a desperate plea in his eyes, demanding to know if I would be all right. But the words that followed were not an apology, not a plea for forgiveness, but a raw, bitter accusation.
Ever since the beginning, all of the problems were caused by you being born weak.
He was raging, flailing his arms, the sheer force of his resentment radiating off him. My head throbbed, but I could hear his words, each one a hammer blow to my already weakened state. He spoke of our relationship, of the deep-seated bad blood that could exist between us, even after a lifetime together. I could practically feel the weight of his tangled emotions, the confusion and the pain he'd carried for so long.
I'm not curious.
He'd always worried, always felt burdened by my weakness, and now he was truly remorseful. A heavy silence fell, broken only by the frantic beat of my own heart. Each breath was a struggle, each second stretched into an eternity. The world around me faded, consumed by a suffocating darkness. My strength was gone, my body failing. Was this it? Was this how it all ended? The chill of defeat, the cold embrace of unconsciousness. I felt myself slipping, drifting away from the waking world. But even as the darkness consumed me, a faint echo remained. A whisper of something left undone, a promise yet unfulfilled. I was losing the fight, but I wasn't ready to surrender. Not yet. Not while the future still hung in the balance. Then in my fever dream, I saw it again. The fire, the chaos, the dying cries of the people I was meant to save. And Jinho's voice, raw with anguish, echoed in my mind, begging me not to forgive him for the pain he'd caused. But even in my unconscious state, a stubborn defiance burned.
I can't do that, brother. How is that solely your fault?
My hand, seemingly on its own, reached out, tapping Jinho's chest with the barest touch of my staff. The onlookers gasped, utterly dumbfounded. It was a tiny, almost imperceptible blow, but it was enough. The duel was over. And I, the frail youngest son, had won. Days later, I was back in the finance pavilion, my body still recovering, but my mind sharper than ever. The stacks of ledgers and documents were no match for my focused attention. Then, with a strength I didn't know I possessed, I reached out a trembling hand and tapped Jinho's shoulder. It was a single, light touch, almost imperceptible, but it landed. The hourglass held by a wide-eyed Yusoak slipped from his fingers, shattering on the ground. The duel was over. I had won. Days later, I was back in the finance pavilion, my body still recovering, but my mind sharper than ever. The stacks of ledgers and documents were no match for my focused attention. Mr. Zhang looked over my work, a surprised expression on his face. Yusoak, passing by, chuckled, admiring how meticulously I'd organized everything. He just couldn't take his eyes off my work, as if it was the most fascinating thing he'd ever seen. My head still swam, my body ached, but the aftershocks of the duel were finally fading. I could feel myself growing stronger, though exhaustion clung to me like a heavy cloak. Yet, even as I recovered, the weight of new responsibilities pressed down, relentless. I was still finding my feet in this reborn life, racing against a future I already knew. Elder brother, a man I barely recognized in this timeline, watched me from a distance. He noticed my unusual dedication, how I threw myself into work, and a knowing smile touched his lips.
Brother, family really is difficult.
I still felt like a stranger here, a past self I barely recognized, trapped in a future rapidly becoming my present. The strangest part was this unfamiliar feeling, this attachment to the very people I was trying to save. It was a strange mix of madness and something else entirely.
What makes me even madder is that along with being mad, I also feel strangely attached.
Elder brother, usually so distant, watched me with that knowing smile. his eyes lingering on the stack of documents I'd somehow processed. I could barely stand, my body screaming from exhaustion, but somehow I kept going. I just felt strange. Then Yu Soak, my strict but surprisingly soft-hearted mentor, materialized before me. He looked at me with an intensity that made my stomach churn. He wasted no time, declaring that from this day forward, I was to be his assistant, overseeing all internal affairs of the entire merchant house. The words hit me like a physical blow. He then proceeded to detail the sheer magnitude of the responsibility. "Simple enough, right?" he asked, his smile not reaching his eyes, as he listed managing all group finances, overseeing taxes, verifying loans, and handling every single expenditure within the merchant group. My blood ran cold.
Don't worry.
Jo Yunjiang, Yu Soak's assistant, tried to reassure me, but her voice was barely a whisper against the roaring panic in my head. I just couldn't bring myself to tell him the truth about why I needed to be on night duty. How could I reveal it was because of the finance pavilion fire, the one that annihilated my family? That catastrophe had struck between 3 and 5 a.m. To prevent it, I had to be there on overnight duty. But if I was dragged into being this lunatic's assistant, I wouldn't even see the office before midnight, let alone be on night watch. In my past life, I'd watched Yu Soak's previous assistant scream and flee from the sheer workload. There was no guarantee I wouldn't end up just like her. Anything but that, I thought. I raised my hand, trying to politely but firmly decline. "I've only just started my training 2 days ago," I reasoned, "and I need time to gain a broad understanding of operations." Jo Yunjiang, who had dozed off, startled awake when I spoke, probably having a nightmare about her own workload.
Isn't overnight duty the very heart of the merchant house? It's a position where all our major decisions are made.
He just smiled, a terrifyingly cheerful expression, as if he hadn't heard a word I said.
You'll handle both regular duties and overnight expenditures.
I immediately turned on my heel, ready to sprint out of there.
Catch him, the young master's running away.
But before I could even make it to the door, Yo Youngam was there, blocking my escape. He scooped me up in one swift motion, my desperate bid for freedom thwarted. 3 days later, the overnight duty roster was posted, and there it was, my name, staring back at me. There was no escape. I was officially trapped in Yu Soak's demanding schedule, both day and night. My head throbbed, my eyes were burning, and the exhaustion was so deep it felt like it was in my bones. I was utterly spent, relying on warmth pills and stimulant pills just to stay functional. I seriously thought I might go crazy from the relentless pace. It felt like I was breaking my own limits every single day, pushed harder than I ever thought possible. Thanks to the inner energy I'd gained, I recovered quickly from the strenuous work. But it seemed the more capable I proved, the more work they sent my way. Once this crisis was over, I swore I was getting out, no matter what, before I ended up like Yu Soak's previous assistant, who'd simply run screaming from the workload. As I stared at the endless stacks of paperwork, a familiar voice cut through the silence, asking if I was Yo Youngam. My second older brother, Jinho, slid a cup of tea across the table towards me, his expression unreadable. I watched the tea swirl in the cup, a prickle of unease running down my spine. This was an unexpected gesture. But before I could even consider taking a sip, Jinho spoke again. He offered another cup, a subtle shift in his eyes hinting at something more than simple courtesy. He pushed the second cup closer, the steam rising between us like a veil.
Tea before we start.
I maintained a calm facade, but my mind was racing, trying to anticipate his next move. We sat in silence, the quiet scratching of our brushes on paper the only sound, each of us pretending to be absorbed in our work. Jinho broke the quiet, his voice deceptively soft as he looked up at me.
Do you have anything to say to me?
I smiled faintly, my gaze unwavering, as I discreetly switched our teacups with a practiced, almost invisible motion. Jinho looked at me, a subtle challenge in his eyes, and I knew exactly what he meant. Is that so? I replied, my voice calm, but my mind raced, dissecting his every move. He then gestured towards the tea, a silent invitation that felt more like a trap. By yourself? I asked, feigning surprise, as if the thought of him being alone with me was the most unexpected thing. He maintained his smile, insisting that it would be a pleasant experience. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken intentions, as I pretended to consider his offer. He looked up at me, still perched on the rafters, a silent command in his gaze. I sighed internally, knowing I couldn't refuse without giving myself away. "Would you like to come down and have some tea?" he asked, a hint of impatience now in his voice as I finally descended. He took a sip from his cup, then wrinkled his nose. "It's a little bitter for my taste." "It had sleeping medicine in it," I stated plainly, watching the realization dawn on his face. Jinho's eyes widened for a split second before they rolled back, and he slumped forward, out cold. I knew it would be a long, hard night, but I pushed through the exhaustion, my focus unwavering. My hand instinctively went to my chest, a familiar ache reminding me of the price I was paying for staying awake. But no matter how tired I was, I had a mission: to catch the arsonist before they could burn my family to the ground. As I moved through the quiet corridors of the merchant house, I kept my eyes peeled, every shadow a potential threat. As I pondered the hidden compartment, a faint click echoed, like something opening where it shouldn't. I looked up to see shadowy figure's subordinate, his face grim, clutching a small, burning stick. He stared at the tiny flame with an unsettling intensity, his brow furrowed in concentration. He muttered desperately under his breath, a whisper I couldn't quite make out. Suddenly, his vision shifted, and before him stood the Sunset Pavilion leader, a ghostly image from a past nightmare. His mind was clearly fracturing, trapped in a horrifying hallucination. The scene changed, and now he faced the monstrous Namgung Kang, his face a mask of cruel amusement.
"You think your life had any meaning? I'll give you a chance to prove your worth. Work for me."
Namgung Kang's face twisted into a smug, cruel smile, a chilling sound escaping his lips. He raised his hand, a glowing dagger materializing in his grip, its light casting a harsh glare.
"Exaggerated it is. Are you alone?"
Shadowy figure's subordinate, consumed by his vision, could only look on in helpless despair.
Yes, I'm still.
Namgung Kang lunged, the glowing dagger flashing through the air.
"Die."
Shadowy figure's subordinate was struck, a blinding flash of light erupting from the impact. He crumpled to the ground, utterly defeated and lost within his nightmare.
"Him."
Namgung Kang stared down at the fallen subordinate, his expression utterly devoid of mercy.
"Young Master Seoho, don't you have anything to say to me?"
Still trapped in the nightmare, I could only offer a weak denial, my mind reeling, broken. The hallucination twisted, a cruel replay of my deepest regrets, tormenting me without end. Suddenly, I was back in the office, Ah-seung's voice cutting through my thoughts, demanding to know how I'd done it. He was incredulous I'd proven myself in internal affairs after only 2 days, something he'd never managed in all his years. He practically accused me of sorcery, his envy clear on his face. I asked if that was why he'd been so stiff, which he vehemently denied, but I knew better. I just calmly explained there was nothing particularly special about me. I simply tried to understand Yu Soak's true intentions behind each task, not just complete the task itself. I went on to explain that if you only focused on the formality, you'd just be working for the sake of working.
I caught myself, sounding like an old man, then quickly attributed that wisdom to my father.
Ah-seung stood there, deep in thought, processing my words.
This is humbling at the same time.
Meet Ah-seung, a member of the financial pavilion working with Seoho.
I told him it didn't have to be, that such an emotion could also be felt for. And again, credited my father with the lesson.
I'll go do my rounds, Master.
I simply agreed that would be for the best.
Ah-seung left, reflecting on how a rookie had caught them off guard, wondering if the future of the merchant house truly lay with me.
I noticed Jinho in the distance, practicing some martial art, and found him annoying.
He moved with focused intensity, completely absorbed in his practice.
The break room, however, felt chaotic, a stark contrast to his ordered movements.
As I looked closer, I spotted a strange, hidden compartment, something I'd never noticed before.
"What is this?" I murmured, my voice barely a whisper. "I didn't see this earlier."
Meanwhile, far from my mundane discovery, a figure writhed in silent agony, caught in the throes of a terrible hallucination. It was the shadowy figure's subordinate, lost in a horrifying memory, blades flashing around him. He relived the moment he had failed to protect the Sunset Pavilion leader, the very man he was sworn to guard. The scene shifted, and suddenly the face of Namgoong Kang, the monster, appeared, his smile a cruel taunt. "What is this?" the subordinate's mind screamed, his inner turmoil a tangible thing.
"Tell me, what is your worth?" Namgoong Kang sneered, his voice dripping with disdain.
What is happening? The subordinate pleaded, the hallucination tightening its grip. Is this a dream? He questioned, blood streaking his face, blurring the line between reality and nightmare. This can't be real, he choked out, his eyes wide with terror.
His hand, trembling uncontrollably, fumbled with a stack of tiles, a desperate attempt to ground himself. But the tremor only grew, reflecting the absolute terror and despair that consumed him. The cloaked figure, the shadowy figure's subordinate, was on his knees, gripping the leg of a phantom, tears streaming down his face.
"How could you ever forget this face?"
He screamed, his voice raw, accusing the man of possessing the very tiles that sealed his fate, demanding to know the value of what he'd lost.
"Please come again."
His internal torment was palpable. How could his entire life have been reduced to a single tile, a fleeting, empty existence?
"What a pathetic state you are in, warrior Ah."
He pleaded, promising to repay the debt threefold, to recover the losses, anything to escape this torment.
"Indeed, you're a capable member of the financial pavilion."
The shadowy figure's subordinate looked up, his face a mask of pleading despair, as Namgoong Kang loomed over him.
"That's why I'm proposing this. Do you want to work together again?"
He hung his head, his face contorted in agony, the offer a twisted mockery of his past. The subordinate thought of the futility of it all, the complete pointlessness of his struggle. He hung his head, his face a mask of agony, the offer a twisted mockery of his past, and I saw the utter futility in his eyes.
"No one allowed you to faint."
Namgoong Kang's voice, cold and devoid of mercy, echoed in shadowy figure's subordinate's mind.
"From now on, you are not a human anymore."
Namgoong Kang's eyes glowed with an eerie blue light, his words twisting shadowy figure's subordinate's very being. Shadowy figure's subordinate remained trapped, his body convulsing, unable to escape the nightmare that held him. He was utterly helpless, still caught in the horrific depths of his hallucination. The next morning, I knew I had to face my brother about Jinho, but I also had far greater news to deliver. My face was grim, the truth was heavy on my tongue. I calmly announced that we had caught the arsonist responsible for the finance pavilion fire. Behind me, the culprit hung tied to a tree, a stark, undeniable image. And yes, I confirmed, we had extracted a full confession. The captured man, disheveled and broken, corroborated every word. "The Lotus Courtesan House, you say?" one of the leaders echoed, surprise lacing his voice. The weight of that revelation settled heavy on every face in the merchant house. The Silver Wind Squad leader and Sunset Pavilion leader, both familiar faces from my past life, breathed a visible sigh of relief. They knew the critical role of the Lotus Courtesan House among the 5 greatest escort pavilions. Jiak Byongcheol, the Breeze Pavilion leader, believed them to be the true culprits, no doubt. Yeon Dami, the Sunset Pavilion leader, agreed. If their plan had succeeded, the damage would have been catastrophic. Go Ilpyeong, the Silver Wind Squad leader, was genuinely grateful for my intervention. He knew that without my quick thinking, everyone would have been asleep, oblivious to the raging fire. Yeon Dami agreed, her voice full of quiet horror at the disaster we'd averted. Even my personal guard, Yo Youngam, had been in danger. She would have consumed the sleeping tea, just like Jinho, if I hadn't swapped the cups. I watched Warrior Ah, the shadowy figure's subordinate, hunched over, clearly still lost in some inner torment. He was muttering to himself, his mind 1,000 miles away. His hallucinations seemed to be getting worse, not better. From the shadows, the cloaked shadowy figure watched his subordinate with unreadable intensity. He acknowledged Warrior Ah's talent, but there was a hint of something else in his voice. Disappointment, perhaps, at his current state. Warrior Ah lifted a hand, a gesture of confusion or pain, still trapped in his internal world. He asked if he should collect something from a tree, his words nonsensical, his eyes still lost.
Warrior Ah finally managed a choked, yes, a broken sound that barely escaped his throat.
His body was still contorted on the ground, a puppet whose strings had been cut. The shadowy figure, seeing his subordinate in such a state, simply watched, a silent, hunched observer to the chaos. Back inside the merchant house, our family leaders were deep in discussion, their faces grim but determined. I laid out my plan. We would let the Lotus courtesan house believe their fire was a success. Let them revel in their presumed victory. Let them think they had us cornered. The silence around the table was heavy, but then, one by one, they nodded their agreement.
Yu So-ak let out a sigh that was almost a groan, muttering about the extra work this would entail.
I offered him a small vacation, knowing a little manipulation was necessary to get him on board.
A month later, the trap was set, the bait taken. Seo Su-chang, the chief manager of the Lotus courtesan house, arrived with a smug air, ready to deny his debts, believing our records were ash. But what he found next, nobody saw it coming. This, I told them, would reveal the Lotus courtesan house's true colors. One by one, the leaders of our merchant house agreed, even my mentor, Chief of Internal Affairs Yu So-ak. Then, with the majority's approval, a decision was made. We would proceed as planned, setting the finance pavilion ablaze. My older brother, however, was clearly still distraught at the thought of losing our precious finance pavilion. But I knew Yo Youngam had secured the documents, and Jinho was still sound asleep, oblivious to the controlled chaos. Watching the flames devour the building, it burned just as it had in my past life, a sickening déjà vu. But this time, it was different. This fire was a calculated victory for our merchant group, a step towards preventing the real massacre. I knew Chief of Internal Affairs Yu So-ak would have extra work for a while, but I figured I'd let him take a small vacation after all this was over. The flames continued to rage, a visual testament to our deception. We would let the Lotus courtesan house stew in their false success for a month, then collect every penny they owed us. 1 month later, the Lotus courtesan house, one of the 5 greatest escort pavilions, prepared to make their move. Then heavy footsteps approached, and I knew Seo Su-chang, the chief manager of the Lotus courtesan house, had arrived. He brazenly declared that all documents for the Lotus courtesan house were gone, lost in the fire, as if that absolved them. My father's back was to me, but I could feel the ice in his expression. He firmly stated that burned documents didn't erase debts. Trust, he emphasized, was the true currency. Seo Su-chang panicked internally, his carefully laid scheme crumbling before his eyes. Warrior Ah, his subordinate, looked on, utterly confused by the sudden, drastic shift in atmosphere. It was clear, Seo Su-chang's plan to exploit the supposed fire had utterly failed. Seo Su-chang stood frozen, surrounded by chaos, as Beek-bok, the master of the Lotus courtesan house, observed the scene. Beek-bok, in a surprisingly calm tone, asked Seo Su-chang what the issue was, his eyes narrowing slightly. Seo Su-chang, flustered, tried to blame the entertainers, a pathetic attempt to deflect from his own incompetence. But Beek-bok was having none of it. His patience had clearly run out.
"You're making me want to kill you."
Seo Su-chang, his face a mask of pure terror, wanted nothing more than to quit.
"What kind of relationship do they have with our family?
Meet Beekbok, the master of the Lotus Courtesan House.
I'm worried that this would be breaking the trust of an old business partner of ours.
My father, however, remained completely unmoved, his expression resolute.
You haven't said a single word in response to anything. I watched the scene unfold, a knowing smirk playing on my lips.
My father began to address the larger issues, discussing how to deal with the Lotus Courtesan House's treachery. Suddenly, he turned, his gaze sharp, at someone who had just entered the room without permission. A cloaked figure stood there, looking startled and out of place.
My father's voice boomed, demanding to know who this intruder was.
Chief of Internal Affairs Yu Soak stepped forward, trying to intervene.
But my father wasn't having it. He barked a question, his eyes narrowed. Is it me or my father?
The subordinate, who had dared to interrupt, now lay face down, knocked flat by my father's rage.
Did you not hear me, anyway, once?
But his words died in his throat, as his gaze fell upon the trembling, tear-streaked woman beside him. Then a chilling vision flashed through my mind. The White Heaven Merchant Group, the monster Namgoong Kang, and the massacre that was yet to come. My father's face twisted into a cruel smirk as he looked at the woman.
No, we could use them instead.
He looked up sharply, eyes widening in surprise as a new voice boomed, "House Master."
Who's coming in here without my permission? Do you want to die?
A man in a black robe, presumably the one who had entered without permission, bowed low, his expression hidden from view. My father's face contorted in a mix of surprise and anger. The door swung open, revealing a group of figures, their backs to us, framed by the doorway. Two men, one with a prominent mustache and the other with a shorter beard, stood in the doorway, their expressions stoic. My father slammed his hand on the door, his frustration evident. A line of loyal members of our merchant house stood ready, a silent army, with me, their leader, at the forefront. Another figure, a senior family member, looked on with a grim expression, mirroring the heavy atmosphere in the room. As the crowd gathered, I watched the debtor, swaggering with an inexplicable air of satisfaction, despite the substantial sum he owed my family. He hummed to himself, completely oblivious to the trap I'd meticulously laid. This guy, why did he look like he was in such a good mood?
So it was about the money. You're delaying payment, aren't you?
The debtor's expression hardened, his smugness dissolving into pure irritation. He scoffed, adjusting his stance, clearly thinking he could intimidate my personal guard. Yo Youngem, however, was not a man to be trifled with. My personal guard simply nodded, a silent challenge in his eyes. The debtor drew his sword, the metallic scrape echoing through the courtyard, ready to prove his foolish point. He was so proud, wasn't he? With a swift, almost imperceptible motion, Yo Youngem shattered the ground with his foot, sending a shockwave that made the debtor stumble back, his sword clattering to the floor. The moment lingered in silence. The debtor, recovering his balance, lunged at Yo Youngem, his face contorted in a desperate snarl. He swung his sword in a furious arc, aiming to cleave my personal guard in two. But Yo Youngem didn't even flinch, just stood there, watching the blade come at him.
If you've drawn your sword, you'd better come at me already. What, are you planning to chat with me instead?
He scoffed, a casual, almost bored sound. The debtor roared in fury, a desperate cry as he pushed all his strength into the attack. But Yo Youngem, with a flick of his wrist, simply knocked the sword away, sending the debtor reeling. He came at Yo Youngem again, a whirlwind of desperate, wild slashes. Each strike was met with the same effortless deflection, the clang of steel echoing through the courtyard. The debtor grunted, sweat beading on his brow as he found himself completely outmatched. He tried another desperate lunge, but Yo Youngem simply sidestepped, letting the momentum carry the debtor past him. The debtor stared, bewildered, at his empty sword, realization dawning in his eyes. Yo Youngem had blocked every single one of his attacks without even breaking a sweat.
I heard the second son of the Yunhee merchant group was a first-rate martial master, but this guy...
Then you deserve a beating.
Meet Yo Youngam, Seoho's personal guard and a skilled martial master. He moved like a blur, his powerful kick connecting before the debtor could even react. A flurry of blows followed, each one precise and brutal, driving the debtor back.
Now clench your teeth, Tilda.
A sharp punch to the face sent the debtor reeling, his eyes squeezed shut in pain. He stumbled, the impact lifting him clean off his feet as his sword clattered uselessly to the ground. Yo Youngam continued his relentless assault, pummeling the fallen man. The debtor was now a crumpled heap, utterly defeated. He lay still, unmoving, blood staining the ground around him. Could he be dead? An onlooker whispered nervously, but Yo Youngam simply scoffed, "Relax, I didn't hit him hard enough to kill him." He leaned down, grabbing the debtor's cheek and slapping him awake, a cold, taunting smile on his face. Yo Youngam's grip on the debtor's cheek tightened, his eyes narrowed in a silent threat.
Awake now.
The debtor finally snapped awake with a terrified scream, scrambling back, his face a mess of blood and fear. Yo Youngam's voice dropped, a dangerous edge to it as he asked if the debtor truly wished to die by challenging our family. He delivered another brutal kick to the debtor, who crumpled, whimpering. Yo Youngam then towered over him, his face contorted in a furious snarl as he demanded to know why the man thought he could delay payment for an entire year, annoying our family, and still live. He accused the debtor of thinking we were fools, revealing that our patience had only been out of respect for the pavilion master. The debtor could only watch in horrified silence as Yo Youngam's hand blurred, striking him across the face with a loud crack. Terrified, the debtor began to spill everything, confessing that it was all a ploy by the Lotus Courtesan House, with the White Heaven Merchant Group behind them. Just then, I stepped forward, holding aloft the very ledgers of the Lotus Courtesan House, damning proof in my hands. The onlookers gasped, confused whispers about the fire rippling through the crowd. The debtor's eyes widened, a dawning horror on his face as he realized the fire had been a fake, a trap. He just stared at the records, clutching his head, utterly unable to process the impossible. Then he looked up, a terrible realization dawning in his eyes.
This doesn't make sense. I heard it all went up in flames. His voice was a desperate whisper, the confession ripping from him. Did the Dawoon Merchant Group mess this up?
The debtor couldn't grasp it. The image of the burning finance pavilion was still vivid, yet here were the ledgers, perfectly intact.
He was shaking, his face a mask of betrayal. They said the job was done. Did they lie to me? Why the hell, though?
I held up the ledger, letting the pages rustle softly, a sound like dry leaves in the wind. My gaze fell upon him, calm and unwavering.
What kind of fire leaves accounting ledgers perfectly preserved? I looked directly into his eyes, letting the truth hang in the air. The kind of fire that was never meant to burn the ledgers at all.
His world shattered around him, the reflection of his terror mirroring in my eyes.
The mastermind behind the Lotus Courtesan House's fire was none other than their own chief manager, Seo Su Chang.
"Wait, this," he stammered, his face a mask of dawning horror as the truth started to click into place.
The chief manager of the Lotus Courtesan House, I stated, letting the name hang in the air. Seo Su Chang.
This was the man who had taken a failing establishment and turned it into one of the top 3 courtesan houses in Hubei, all with his outstanding managerial skills. The weight of the revelation settled over the onlookers, a collective gasp rippling through the crowd as they recognized the name, realizing the sheer scale of the deception.
Then I brought out the final nail in their coffin, the actual accounting ledgers of the Lotus Courtesan House, undeniable proof of their treachery. My gaze sharpened and I leaned in, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous register. Say one more word and you will regret it.
The debtor, completely broken, could only stare, his eyes wide with terror and the dawning understanding that his life was now entirely in my hands.
Chief SEO, you son of a bitch, if you talk about that, I'll kill you.
Oh, yes.
What?
Beak Bok, he explained, had always lived in the shadow of the previous master, forever struggling to measure up. That constant pressure, Yu Soak mused, likely fueled his rash decisions and disastrous mistakes. It was a grim cycle, where even minor errors were magnified into significant flaws under the weight of his father's legacy. He eventually opened an illegal gambling den, plunging deeper into corruption. This reckless venture led to his ruin, accumulating massive debts and delayed payments. Perhaps that was why, Yu Soak concluded, Beak Bok's judgment became so utterly twisted.
Fuck, it's not like I made the mistake on purpose. Those arrogant bastards always speaking of father.
Yu Soak then confirmed my suspicions. The Daewon Merchant Group had allied with the White Heaven Merchant Group. It all made sense now. The layers of deception were slowly peeling back, revealing the full extent of the conspiracy.
Now, our house is in a precarious position because of it. He then added that the situation with Beak Bok had special circumstances. Regardless, he concluded, things have been resolved now.
I frowned, deep in thought, as the implications of Beak Bok's actions settled in. So he ran an illegal gambling den. No wonder the brothel was a mess, and their payment to us was delayed. Yu Soak bowed slightly, a gesture of respect. He then tapped his finger against his chin, a familiar habit when he was deep in thought. I returned his gaze, a slight smile playing on my lips. He made a subtle gesture with his hand, a clear signal that our conversation was turning to more serious matters. My expression hardened, reflecting the gravity of the situation. I wondered what the Murim Alliance had planned, what their true intentions were in all this. Suddenly, a masked assailant appeared behind me, poised to strike. As we walked, the setting sun cast long, ominous shadows, stretching endlessly before us. Yu Soak confirmed the Daewon Merchant Group had indeed allied themselves with Namgung Kang's White Heaven Merchant Group. I couldn't shake the feeling that the Murim Alliance had a far darker game at play, their true intentions still hidden in the shadows. Then a masked assailant appeared behind me, a phantom poised to strike.
Just what could you possibly be pondering about so deeply that you haven't responded to my calls since earlier?
Yu Soak instantly moved, his eyes scanning for the unseen attacker, his hand already on his sword. He challenged the hidden foe, his voice cutting through the suffocating tension that had suddenly descended. A masked assailant burst from the shadows, launching an aggressive, deadly strike with blurring speed. I observed her incredible speed and precision, recognizing the mastery in her every movement. Her powerful sword strikes left no doubt. This was an opponent of immense skill. A faint, sweet scent of orchids drifted through the air, catching my attention amidst the chaos. Then a smoke bomb detonated with a muffled thud, instantly filling the area with thick, suffocating smoke.
Come behind me.
Yu Soak's hand flew to the hilt of his sword, his grip firm and ready for the inevitable. A cloaked figure, masked and silent, emerged from the lingering smoke, her presence unnervingly swift. The masked assailant, a phantom in dark robes, stood before us, her eyes glinting with cold intent. We hadn't even sensed her until she was right there, a terrifying testament to her stealth.
Yu Soak's voice cut through the tense air, challenging her. Who are you? Identify yourself.
Instead of answering, the masked assailant drew her sword, a clear declaration. She wanted to fight.
She moved with blurring speed, her blade a silver streak aimed directly at me. I barely had time to react as the masked assailant closed the distance in an instant, her sword poised to strike. She's quick, I thought, impressed despite the danger, as the masked figure launched another fierce attack. Yu Soak was already moving, deflecting a powerful sword strike with practiced ease, but her skill was undeniable. The masked assailant's eyes, though partially obscured, narrowed with intense focus, revealing a flicker of her deadly resolve. The masked assailant became a blur, her blade a terrifying whirlwind, pushing Yu Soak back with relentless fury. I struggled to follow the lightning-fast exchanges, the glint of steel a dangerous dance in the dim light. She moved with a grace that belied her raw power, each strike aimed to overwhelm, to shatter my mentor's defenses. Light on her feet, yet her sword strikes were devastatingly strong. This was undoubtedly a master. But then a strange detail cut through the intensity, a subtle, sweet scent, orchids. Suddenly, she pulled back, a small, dark object arcing through the air towards us. It detonated with a muffled thud, unleashing a thick, swirling cloud of smoke that instantly choked the space. The world around us vanished into opaque gray, visibility dropping to zero in an instant. I squinted, trying to pierce through the haze, but it was like being swallowed by a cloud. Then another object, smaller and brighter, bounced off the floor near my feet. A fire bomb. But even as the flames began to spread, a chilling realization dawned on me. This wasn't a real attack. It was a distraction, a smokescreen, or in this case, a fire screen. The flames were spreading now, quickly engulfing the room in a fiery haze. My mentor, still a bit stunned, looked around, trying to make sense of the sudden chaos. But I knew, with absolute certainty, that this wasn't about burning us alive. Her only goal was to get away, to escape this place and leave us confused in her fiery wake. It was almost a relief, knowing that if she had truly gone all out, we would have been in much greater danger. I noticed a faint outline on the floor, where the flames hadn't quite reached yet. And then I saw it, an underground tunnel hidden right beneath our feet. The masked assailant hadn't just vanished into thin air, she'd gone this way. That masked figure, she had to be related to this hidden door. The wooden floorboards creaked as I stepped towards it. This wasn't just an escape route, it was an entrance.
This was it, the hidden entrance to the Dawoon merchant group's base.
I braced myself, knowing that whatever lay beyond would be a crucial step in unraveling Namgoong Kang's full conspiracy. Standing before the Dawoon merchant group's hidden base, the truth hit me. An underground tunnel truly connected it to the Lotus courtesan house. My mind raced, every piece of the conspiracy finally clicking into place with grim certainty. Yu Soak, ever the pragmatist, turned to me, a question etched in his eyes.
Why haven't we used the Lotus courtesan house to our advantage already?
He wondered why I hadn't immediately leveraged the information we had. I explained its strategic value. The Lotus courtesan house, one of Hubei province's 5 major courtesan houses, was a prime location for influence. It offered constant contact, opportunities to earn favors, and a rapid source of high-quality information, not to mention a subtle way to promote our own merchandise. I cracked a small smile, recalling a particular set of ledgers I'd reviewed. Looking at those ledgers, I'd seen someone with truly outstanding capabilities. So much so that I wanted to bring him to my side and put him to work right away. But then something else caught my eye, a detail that sent a shiver down my spine. This was a dangerous place, with secrets far deeper than I first imagined. Then, the same cloaked, hunched figure I'd seen before emerged from the shadows, making no sound as he moved through the base. He was clearly focused on something beyond the door, his eyes narrowed in concentration. As he turned, I saw a flicker of madness in his eyes, a wild, unhinged look that made my blood run cold. The words he muttered were a jumble of nonsense, a desperate plea for something lost or stolen. Yu Soak appeared beside me, his expression grim, as if he, too, sensed the futility of extracting any real information from this man. The figure continued to babble, his words forming a skull-like image in the air, a chilling visual representation of his broken mind. That gave me the chills. I thought he was a ghost who died from overwork. No, never mind, let's just go. What's with all this? I realized the reason. Hubei's nobles supported the Murim alliance, and Namgoong Kang must have been because of this location. And now that place is mine. No, our merchant groups.
We've captured one of those Murim alliance bastards. Maybe he went crazy after seeing a ghost.
I regretted that we couldn't learn more from him. His madness was a wall between us and the truth. As we pushed deeper into the Dawoon base, Yo Yoongam's voice cut through the air, sharp with sudden tension. He was already moving, shoving me aside, his hand outstretched as if to shield me from an unseen blow. A metallic clang echoed, and a long bamboo spear, a trap, plunged into the spot where I'd just been standing. A cold phantom shiver ran through me, a bitter taste of if only from a past I desperately wanted to forget. But I pushed the memory away. I was no longer that man, and history would not repeat itself. Yo Youngam stared, bewildered, at the impaled bamboo, his body still poised to protect. His subordinate quickly pulled the spear free, the air thick with the scent of fresh danger. With grim urgency, Yo Youngam scooped me into his arms, racing through the bamboo forest, Yu Soak and the subordinate close behind.
I can't be late. I'm heading there first, take him.
All right, Chief.
The forest blurred around me as Yo Youngam moved at incredible speed, my vision swimming with a sharp, burning pain. He surged forward, a blur of speed and determination, my body cradled against him. The path ahead was a dizzying rush of green. The bamboo stalks a fence around our desperate escape. He leapt over obstacles with ease, his focus solely on getting me to safety, the wind whipping past my face. The pain in my side was a dull roar now, and I felt my consciousness slipping, my grip on reality fraying. A single, desperate thought echoed in my mind: I can't die here, not again. Finally, the bamboo forest gave way to clearing, and Yo Youngam gently lowered me, his face etched with concern. My personal guard, usually so composed, frantically called out for help, his voice strained with urgency. I lay there, the world spinning, a small pile of bamboo shoots scattered around me like grim reminders of the ambush. The bright sun seemed to mock me, its warmth doing nothing to ease the chill creeping into my bones. My eyes fluttered shut, the pain a relentless drumbeat, but a single image solidified in my fading vision: the faces of my family. Suddenly, a voice, sharp and accusatory, sliced through the haze. It's your asterisk fault. The words were a brutal punch, but I couldn't even process who was speaking, my world consumed by darkness. My consciousness flickered, the world a blurry swirl of green and brown, as Yo Youngam's strong arms cradled me. I could feel the slick warmth of my own blood on my side, a chilling reminder of the ambush. Yo Youngam, ever vigilant, was already kneeling, pressing against the wound, his face a mask of urgent concentration. The world spun, and I felt myself being lifted, carried away from the bamboo grove, the shadows closing in. My last coherent thought was a desperate plea: thank. The next thing I knew, I arrived at the medical pavilion.
A doctor's voice, grave and weary, cut through the pain. A penetration wound from a bamboo shoot. Even a little later, it could have been fatal.
Lying there, battered and weak, I remembered the crushing pain of burying a child in my past life. That kind of loss, I vowed I would never let my family endure again. So I resolved we would change the future, one piece at a time. Later, I sat up, feeling the lingering ache but also a renewed strength, and began to outline my next moves to Mr. Jang. My recovery was swift, a testament to my new body's resilience, and soon I was walking again, each step filled with quiet, powerful resolve. Elder brother ran his hand across my forehead, a gesture of quiet affection I hadn't seen from him in so long. As I walked through the medical pavilion, fully recovered, the saved family members emerged, their faces etched with relief and gratitude. They bowed deeply, their voices thick with emotion, thanking me over and over again for saving them from a fate they never even knew they faced. Their heartfelt words were a powerful reminder of why I'd returned, why I fought so hard. Even Yu Soak, my strict but surprisingly soft-hearted mentor, watched me with an expression of open surprise and admiration. And then there was Yo Youngam, my personal guard, who simply looked at me, a silent acknowledgement of the strength I now possessed. I walked with a newfound ease, my physical constitution far beyond what it had been, a direct result of the mysterious dragon star physique. One of the merchant house members, overcome with emotion, wept openly, unable to articulate his thanks. He admitted he'd never expected me, the family's sickly, useless burden, to become the pillar of strength I now was. I just stood there, letting their gratitude wash over me, the weight of my responsibility settling deep in my bones. It was a stark contrast to my past self, who would have shrunk from such attention. Now it fueled my resolve. My steps, once tentative and weak, now carried a new strength, a purposeful stride that defied my past. Yo Youngam, my loyal guard, watched me pass, a silent flicker of admiration in his gaze. Yu So-ak, my mentor, offered a knowing smile, seeing not just my change, but the true power I now wielded. My once frail constitution, the very thing that defined my weakness, had become my greatest strength. This newfound vitality fueled a resolve I never knew I possessed, a fierce defiance against the boy I used to be. A cloaked, hunched figure emerged from the shadows, stepping into the moonlit clearing to confront me. He moved with an unsettling grace, his gaze fixed on me, and I braced myself for whatever he had planned. His head tilted, a silent question in his posture, challenging me to make the first move.
"What made you come here so late, without even a guard?" he asked, a subtle smirk playing on his lips.
I held his gaze, a chill running down my spine as I realized he knew more about my movements than he let on. He smiled then, a slow, knowing expression that promised trouble. I narrowed my eyes, waiting.
"Do you perhaps know about the mysterious dragon star physique?" he asked, his voice low, and my blood ran cold.
I stared at him, my mind racing. This was knowledge no one outside my closest circle should possess. He watched my reaction, a silent, almost predatory satisfaction in his eyes. He let out a soft, almost amused ha, confirming his awareness of my secret. The moment lingered in silence. He just stood there, watching me, his presence a heavy weight in the night. Then he spoke again, claiming he also possessed a powerful amount of yin energy from within, mirroring my own internal struggle. My gaze narrowed, suspicion a cold knot in my gut. How could he know so much about me, about my body? He looked at me, a strange glint in his eyes, as if weighing my worth. He then raised a hand, a subtle gesture that seemed to offer something profound. My mind raced, trying to decipher his intentions, trying to see the trap in his generosity. I watched him closely, my expression carefully neutral, as he prepared to reveal more. He said he wanted to know if I'd be willing to learn from him, if I would accept his guidance. He continued, pointing out that our meeting was no coincidence, and that his own powers made him uniquely qualified to help me. My mind weighed his words, every implication, every hidden agenda. He offered to teach me, to share his knowledge, to help me control the very energy that could destroy me. A faint, knowing smirk played on his lips, as if he already knew my answer. As he spoke, a chilling certainty settled over me. My decision was already made. I didn't need to say a word. My expression spoke volumes. How could I refuse a chance to learn from one of the great leaders of our merchant house?
"All right if you say so."
The very next morning, true to his word, my training in the Supreme Yin Ice Sea Divine Arts began. He placed a hand against my back, ready to guide the flow of cultivation. But the instant his energy touched mine, a brilliant, icy blue light erupted around me. It surged and pulsed, an unmistakable sign. My mysterious dragon star physique was responding. The shadowy figure pulled his hand back, a flicker of surprise in his eyes.
"His meridians are already open," he murmured, clearly taken aback.
He stared at my back, where his hand had been, a small spark of blue energy still visible. I just looked away, feigning innocence, knowing the true origin of my awakened meridians was a secret I had to keep. He looked at me with a questioning gaze, still clearly surprised by this new technique I supposedly possessed. My mind raced, trying to keep my expression neutral.
"Yin energy," he murmured, his brow furrowed in thought.
He leaned in, a speculative look on his face, as if trying to piece together a puzzle I refused to reveal.
"People say this cultivation technique was created when our ancestors were freezing to death. Perhaps something similar happened to you. I do feel bad."
I couldn't tell him the truth. I was sure he'd never believe it even if I tried.
I just kept my face blank, letting him draw his own conclusions, which conveniently aligned with my cover story.
"That's a good thing. since you are already prepared to utilize the cultivation technique. We can skip to stamina and start right away, starting now.
He raised his hand, gesturing to my back, and I could practically feel the weight of the coming training settle upon me.
My best, so that my teachings can help you save your own life.
Then came the real test, carrying a heavy barrel of water on my back while balancing 2 small bowls on my outstretched hands. It was a punishing, slow dance designed to test my core strength and balance, making every muscle ache. Next, the shadowy figure had me practice calligraphy, insisting even daily work could be a form of cultivation. I leaned over the desk, sweat beading on my brow, trying to focus on the strokes while maintaining a subtle internal energy flow.
I'm going to give you homework every day. You need to train even when you're working.
The nerve of him, assigning me homework on top of my actual work. It felt less like teaching and more like outsourcing. My new personal guard, Ah Seung, stood nearby, looking utterly confused as the shadowy figure rattled off commands.
What a guest.
The shadowy figure, however, was already in his own world, muttering to his subordinate, Warrior Ah, who clearly had no idea what was going on.
Oh, then I'll go.
He just casually dismissed Warrior Ah, who still seemed to be processing the instruction. This whole exchange was just baffling. I just stood there, absorbing it all, still trying to make sense of this new, complicated arrangement. The shadowy figure, meanwhile, seemed lost in his own thoughts, a finger to his chin.
He's having me do everything because he's too lazy. I knew it.
Young master, take good care of my subordinate.
Warrior Ah, still dazed, registered the instruction with a delayed gasp, clutching his head in confusion.
Wait, what?
As I prepared to leave, the shadowy figure turned his attention back to his bewildered subordinate.
Go and investigate the Hubei Qingyang County landowner, Zhang Yugong.
Warrior Ah, still clearly not all there, just gave a vague, dazed response. The shadowy figure then casually took a sip of tea, his mind already moving on to the next step of his intricate plan. He revealed a map, pointing out a specific area with quiet confidence.
Some of my land is there.
Then he unfurled a map, his finger tracing a specific, crucial area. A portion of my family's land was marked there. His casual air vanished, replaced by a cold, calculating gaze into the moonlit night. A single, intricate doll stood on the table, its delicate form poised as if in mid-dance. Then, as if moved by an unseen string, it began to sway, a silent, unsettling performance. It was a doll that danced on its own, a curious sight that had been brought to my attention. My gaze remained fixed on it, the implications of its existence swirling in my mind. I remembered the popular parlor game among noblewomen, where they would gather and select a chosen lady to be treated like an empress for a day. It seemed harmless enough on the surface. But I asked myself, what was the true nature of this game, this item? The truth, I realized with a jolt, involved Lady Ju. Her innocent-looking game was a front, a clever ploy that had led to the ruin and deaths of countless landlords through tax evasion. I thought of Lord Song, a man my family respected, whose life had been utterly destroyed by these very schemes. Directly confronting Lady Ju now was out of the question. It was far too dangerous. I needed another way to take on this intricate web of corruption. It turned out a curious game had recently swept through the noblewomen's circles. They would choose a young lady, then take turns assigning her tasks. Sometimes, the chosen lady would even receive a golden flower. I watched the scene unfold, a woman holding a small bag, her expression a mix of resignation and worry, as other noblewomen around a lavish table seemed to enjoy themselves. But the game wasn't so innocent. The game was Lady Ju's, the wife of an official, and it was a front for something far more insidious. She was Lady Ju, the wife of an official, and this was all her doing. The game, I realized, was how she was systematically ruining landlords, creating a cycle of debt and despair. I saw a flashback to Lord Song, a respected acquaintance of my family, his face etched with despair, as he too fell victim to these schemes. His ruin, like so many others, was a direct consequence of Lady Ju's game. Now, I finally understood the full scope of her corruption. Now, I think I understand a little. It was all coming together. This parlor game, it was a facade, a cruel instrument designed to ruin landlords who dared defy Lady Ju. My mind reeled, picturing those countless shattered families. Could it be that in my previous life, the reason so many landlords, including Lord Song, fell into ruin from tax evasion and even took their own lives was ultimately because of Lady Joo? Lord Song is a long-time acquaintance of our EUNHAE merchant group and is well respected among the common folk. If we help HIM now, he will surely repay our kindness many times over. However, getting entangled with Lady Joo at this point is too dangerous. I rubbed my chin, discarding one desperate plan after another. What am I even thinking? I muttered, realizing the depth of the deception demanded a more subtle touch. My gaze drifted back to the dancing doll. I recalled a report about its creator, a slave from the Golden Immortal Village in Jiangxi Province. A slave, yes, the detail was distinct in my memory. I needed to investigate there, gather information, and bide my time until the emperor could intervene. This rare artistry, this intricate craftsmanship, could only come from one place. In my past life, I knew the artisan who made it. He was a slave from the Golden Immortal Village, deep in Jiangxi Province. Wasn't he a slave? I remembered the detail distinctly. I needed to investigate there, gather information, and avoid a direct confrontation with Lady Ju until the emperor could intervene. The emperor, I knew, would soon issue a decree banning these noblewomen's games. When that happened, Lady Ju's misdeeds would be exposed for all to see. As long as I stayed out of sight until then, I would be fine. My staff stared, wide-eyed and shocked, as I announced my immediate expedition to Jiangxi Province. "What is all this about, all of a sudden?" one of them blurted, clearly bewildered. "You said nothing until yesterday," another protested, "and now you're suddenly going to Jiangxi Province." They clearly thought I was mad. And they were right to be surprised. I was still so young, and this was my very first official expedition. My mentor, Chief of Internal Affairs Yu Soak, watched me with a thoughtful expression. His hand went to his chin, weighing the implications of my journey.
Master Seoho's first official expedition.
He spoke softly, almost to himself, the words echoing the weight of the moment. Mr. Zhang, from the finance pavilion, exchanged a knowing look with Yu Soak.
He's far more mature than his age would suggest.
Indeed.
Go Ilpyeong, the Silver Wind squad leader, beamed with pride, a wide, almost goofy smile spreading across his face.
I mean, he even gave the chief his notes.
My personal guard, Yo Youngam, would accompany me, along with Captain Young Chung and his escort squad. We were a formidable group, our journey beginning under a watchful sky. Then one of the escorts, clearly a man who'd seen too many bad omens, nervously wondered if someone had just cursed their entire expedition. We continued on, the road stretching out before us, the air still crisp and cool. The path wound through rolling hills, the landscape dotted with sparse trees and distant mountains. Our procession was a slow, steady march, each cart carefully laden with our valuable cargo. Suddenly, a familiar figure emerged from the distance, riding towards us with an easy confidence.
"Ah, the Silver Wind Squad. I've been expecting you," Gwak Myunghyun, my master, said, his voice carrying the weight of his experience.
We exchanged formal greetings, a brief pause in our journey as the two groups merged. His eyes scanned our carts, ensuring everything was secure and properly protected.
"Chief Sen sent word," he continued, a slight shift in his tone. "He invited you to stop by for warm tea."
It was a kind offer, but I knew his visit wasn't just for pleasantries. He exchanged a knowing look with another escort, a silent conversation passing between them.
The Green Forest Bandits.
Meet Gwak Myunghyun, Seoho's master and head escort of the prosperous escort agency. In this area, that must mean that person is nearby. I watched the master of the prosperous escort agency, his words echoing my own quiet dread. Our journey brought us to the imposing stronghold of the Green Forest Group, nestled deep within the mountains. My target was here, the one I'd been tracking, the one Gwak Myunghyun had warned me about. The heavy gates loomed before us, a grim welcome.
"It's nice to have you here today," he greeted us, his voice surprisingly even.
And there he was, Jang Disu himself, the wolf-fang sword demon of Wudong Mountain, a man whose reputation preceded him.
I am Go Ilpyeong, captain of the Silver Wind Squad, Go Ilpyeong stated, his tone formal.
"And I, Gwak Myunghyun, head escort of the prosperous escort agency," Gwak Myunghyun added, completing our cover.
They introduced themselves, laying out our cover story, while I simply observed the bandit chief. He was a burly man, but his eyes held a surprising weariness, a hint of something deeper. His demeanor was too calm, too refined for the leader of such a notorious group. As we were offered tea, I took a sip, my expression carefully neutral. I leaned in, feigning an innocent question about the quality of their provisions. My words, delivered with a smile, were a subtle jab, a question of their competence, and I watched Jang Disu's face for the slightest tremor. He just grunted, a low rumble of displeasure, but his eyes narrowed, scrutinizing my expression as if searching for a hidden meaning. Gwak Myunghyun, ever watchful, quietly observed the interaction, a flicker of concern crossing his face. But I kept my smile in place, sipping my tea, letting the silence stretch, letting my casual dismissal of their hospitality sting. Jang Disu finally broke the quiet, his voice a low growl, asking if I was implying their offerings weren't good enough for my trip. I just chuckled, a light, airy sound that probably did nothing to soothe his ruffled feathers, while Go Ilpyeong remained impassive beside me, always the professional. I took another exaggerated sip, prolonging the moment, pushing him just a little further. Then, with a straight face, I declared that the tea was, in fact, quite good, a deliberate backhanded compliment that only deepened his scowl. The air around Jang Disu grew thick with his barely contained fury. He was a man accustomed to fear, not thinly veiled insults from a merchant. But I held his gaze, unblinking, letting him stew in his anger, letting him wonder if I was truly as innocent as I appeared. My internal assessment was complete. He knew nothing of the mountain's true secrets. His pride was all that mattered. It was time to drop the facade. I introduced myself, Yoon Seo-ho, from the finance pavilion of the merchant group, a name that carried its own weight. I leaned back, a subtle shift in posture that spoke volumes, observing their reactions around the table. My words, disguised as a polite inquiry, had done their job. Jang Disu's face twisted into a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He laughed, a loud, booming sound that felt more like a challenge than amusement, his blindfolded face still conveying displeasure. I simply took another slow sip of my tea, letting the silence stretch, the casual gesture a deliberate provocation. My eyes, however, were sharp, missing nothing of the subtle tensions brewing. One of Jang Disu's men, perhaps sensing the shift in atmosphere, nervously licked his lips. Another swallowed hard, the gulp audible in the sudden quiet that had fallen over the room. Jang Disu leaned forward, his patience clearly wearing thin. "Compared to our food," I said, my voice mild, "theirs is a little lacking." The words hung in the air, a direct jab at their hospitality, and Jang Disu's expression darkened even further. Go Ilpyeong, sitting beside me, shifted uncomfortably, a quiet observation that something was indeed very strange. I picked at the food with my chopsticks, a picture of casual indifference, completely unfazed by the growing anger. Then, with a casual tap, I set my chopsticks down, the clatter echoing just a little too loudly in the tense silence. My mind was racing. This man, Jang Disu, he absolutely could not know the secret hidden on this mountain.
Have you been having a hard time lately? I asked, a seemingly innocent question that made one of his men spit out his drink in shock.
His subordinate, a burly bandit, glared at me, clearly offended by my words. But Jang Disu merely took a slow sip of his tea, a dangerous calm settling over him.
A mistake out of ignorance, Master Seoho. Do you know that your words just now are incredibly insulting to our stronghold?
I just smiled, a slight, unapologetic curve of my lips, as if his anger meant nothing to me. Jang Disu's eye, visible beneath his blindfold, narrowed. The other bandits around him started to shift, some rubbing their heads in frustration, others outright yelling, barely contained in their anger. Jang Disu slammed his teacup down, the sound sharp and final.
All the while acting as if you're full, truly despicable.
He stared at me, daring me to respond, but I just met his gaze, my expression completely unreadable. I held his stare, letting the silence stretch, forcing him to wonder if he'd truly understood my insult or just misheard the youngest master of a great merchant house. Then, with a subtle tilt of my head, I let an almost imperceptible smirk touch my lips, confirming every single word. Jang Disu's good eye narrowed, and I could practically feel the rage radiating off him, his hand already moving towards his blade. His men, hardened bandits, watched me with a mixture of confusion and disbelief, unsure if I was utterly mad or incredibly brave. Jang Disu finally rose, his towering frame casting a shadow over me, his single eye burning like a coal, demanding an explanation. His subordinate, a burly man, stepped forward, his voice a low growl, asking if I was truly provoking their leader, the wolf fang sword demon, to his face. I simply chuckled, a light, almost dismissive sound that only seemed to fuel their indignation. Jang Disu slammed his fist down on the table, the wood groaning under the impact, a clear sign my little game was pushing him to his absolute limit. His booming laughter echoed through the hall, a harsh, mocking sound meant to intimidate, but I simply met his gaze. He leaned in closer, his voice a dangerous whisper, asking if I was sure I knew what I was talking about. I leaned back, a faint smile on my face, and confirmed that indeed, I knew exactly what I was saying. Jang Disu's men exchanged uneasy glances, sensing a shift in the air, a tension even they, hardened bandits, couldn't quite place. Jang Disu's voice was low, edged with a dangerous calm, acknowledging my words had struck a nerve. He pointed out that I clearly had some kind of countermeasure ready, calling me young master now, a subtle shift from his previous dismissiveness. I just smiled, a small, knowing upturn of the lips that said everything and nothing. Jang Disu, the wolf fang sword demon himself, just gave a soft, almost amused, oh-ho. I told him it was quite simple, really. Then I leaned forward, the smile fading into something more serious, and said it was time to shake things up a bit. I looked directly at him and remarked that it looked like he'd been taking great care of his particular affliction. My words hung in the air, a thinly veiled reference to his reliance on the specific herb I knew about. He stared back, unblinking, the implications slowly dawning on him. His eyes widened, the slight smile vanishing as the realization hit him like a physical blow.
What?
The silence that followed was broken only by the sudden, enraged shout of one of his men, calling me a bastard. Jang Disu's fist clenched, his knuckles white with a rage he barely contained, his glare promising pain. His men, however, had no such restraint. One lunged, face contorted, ready to silence me for good. I met his fury with a calm gaze, explaining his inability to collect tolls wasn't just bad luck, but a direct consequence of his hidden ailment. Another of his men pulled a blade, the glint of steel reflecting their worn-thin patience. "And you will listen to me," I finished, my voice cutting through the rising tension, utterly unafraid. Jang Disu visibly flinched at my words, a sudden shock washing over his hardened face as the truth began to sink in.
"Did you say that, you brat?" he demanded, his voice a low growl, a mix of anger and disbelief.
His men, still enraged, echoed his outrage, convinced I was nothing but an insolent child who deserved a beating. But Jang Disu just stared at me, his eyes wide, the anger slowly draining, replaced by a dawning realization.
"I, Jang Disu, am indebted to you," he finally said, his voice quiet, the words a bitter pill.
He bowed his head, a heavy, defeated gesture that spoke volumes of his shattered pride and broken will.
"This is it."
He looked at me with a spark of desperate hope, then finally gave his answer.
I have something that would be very helpful, the Wudong Mountain.
A single, sharp nod was all I gave, a silent confirmation of our new, uneasy alliance. And with that, the agreement was sealed. A small, knowing smile played on my lips as Jang Disu finally conceded. He held up a bundle of the spiritual herbs, his eyes wide with an admiration I hadn't quite expected. The news, just as I'd predicted, spread like wildfire. Within days, whispers about spiritual herbs sprouting on Wudong Mountain were all over the region. It was almost too easy. But what happened next proved my foresight. Not long after, the Murim Alliance swooped through Jang Disu's stronghold, seizing control. The entire area was engulfed in a blaze of their making, a clear message to anyone who dared to stand in their way. They took Wudong Mountain by force, and with it, every single spiritual herb. The Murim Alliance had monopolized the trade, exactly as I had foreseen. Jang Disu, seeing the immediate consequence of my warning, could only stare, his skepticism replaced by awe. The moment lingered in silence. I explained the truth, a truth Jang Disu had never dared to imagine. Spiritual herbs weren't just rare finds, they grew all over Wudong Mountain. His eyes widened, trying to process the sheer scale of what I was telling him. I pointed out a lotus flower, explaining its excellent properties for damaged organs. Then a white tiger spirit flower, which expels negative energy, and others that help the body absorb medicine more effectively. There were countless spiritual herbs, like snow ginseng, thriving on that mountain, a bounty beyond his wildest dreams. He looked at me, then at the mountain, then back at me, a deep frown etched on his face, clearly struggling to believe such abundance.
You think?
I simply smiled, letting the silence speak for itself before answering his disbelief. It's rare, I told him, gesturing to the landscape, because no one has ever truly understood what lies here. I admitted I couldn't exactly see the future, but my predictions weren't guesswork. I laid out the undeniable facts, the precise reasons the Murim Alliance had moved so quickly, just as I'd known they would. We secure the herbs from this place, I proposed, and let's keep this deal between us. Jang Disu's face hardened, a flicker of grim understanding in his eye. Because if word gets out about the true abundance of these herbs, I continued, my voice low and firm, we'll face competition from every trading group out there. I laid out exactly how quickly others would move to monopolize them. He gritted his teeth, his lone eye narrowed, picturing the very groups I'd just described.
Wait, is the Murim Alliance already here?
I simply held out a rolled scroll, the terms of our alliance clearly written.
Will you accept our offer?
He met my gaze, then extended his hand, sealing our partnership with a firm grip. A genuine smile finally broke across his face.
You're truly something else.
A contract is the foundation of any good deal, is it not?
He just shook his head, a slight chuckle escaping him. And just like that, the contract was signed, the ink barely dry. Jang Disu peered at the spiritual herbs I'd laid out, his eyes widening with disbelief and awe. He shook his head again, a low chuckle rumbling in his chest.
W8. Young Master Tilda.
He pulled me into a tight embrace, a warmth I hadn't expected from a bandit leader. I could only offer a small, slightly awkward smile in return. Yo Youngam, my personal guard, simply watched, a hint of amusement in his usually stoic expression. Jang Disu finally pulled away, his hands still on my shoulders, his gaze intense. He then turned to his own men, a serious look on his face. He gestured towards me, a clear command in his eyes.
Top tier.
He turned, a flicker of surprise in his eyes, asking me to repeat myself. I simply pushed the small, heavy bag of gold into his hands, a silent testament to my words. Jang Disu stared down at the unexpected offering, his expression unreadable. He looked back at me, still grasping the bag, clearly trying to make sense of my gesture. For a moment, he remained silent, the weight of the gold and the implications settling between us. Then, a slow, almost imperceptible smile spread across his face.
If you're uncomfortable accepting it as a toll fee, I told him, then consider it a down payment.
He let out a short, amused puff of air, then nodded. Very well.
With a firm grasp, he accepted the pouch, the alliance now truly sealed.
In a hurry, let's be on our way, I declared, eager to move on to the next phase of our plan.
An unseen voice mused on my youth, on how bold and clever I was despite it. Then the voice added, "He reminds me of an old friend."
Then I looked at the old, broken buildings, now engulfed in the familiar, terrifying flames of my past. I felt the familiar dread creep up, the phantom heat on my skin, and the memory of the massacre threatened to consume me again. But then I heard a voice, sharp and urgent, calling me back from the brink of that nightmare. My personal guard, Yo Youngam, gripped my shoulder, his face etched with concern, pulling me back to the present. I pushed the haunting visions away, shaking my head to clear the lingering smoke from my mind. I turned to Youngam and the other guards, my voice low and firm. From now on, you must conceal your weapons. We're not here to fight, not yet. No matter what happens, I continued, my gaze unwavering, you are not to engage in any pointless skirmishes. Youngam nodded, his expression grim, understanding the weight of my words. I needed them alive, not as martyrs. Our mission demanded discretion, not unnecessary bloodshed. The path ahead was long, and the cost of failure. It was something I couldn't bear to think about.
Our mission demanded discretion, not unnecessary bloodshed. The path ahead was long, and the cost of failure. It was something I couldn't bear to think about. As I prepared to leave, a voice echoed in my mind, an unknown observer remarking on my youth and how much I reminded them of an old acquaintance. This unknown observer seemed to ponder the heavy price I would eventually pay for my ambitions. Yo Youngam, my personal guard, stood ready, his hand resting on the hilt of his concealed blade, his expression as resolute as ever. I found myself drifting in a chilling void, my vision blurred, a creeping sense of unease taking hold. My eyes snapped open, a strange disorientation clouding my mind. A cold sweat slicked my skin as I struggled to piece together where I was, what was happening. Then a desperate whisper echoed in my mind, a child's plea for help. I turned my head, searching for the source, a prickle of alarm running down my spine. Someone's there, I thought, my heart pounding. The voice grew clearer now, a child's wail, "Father." I reached out, a desperate urgency gripping me, my own voice a muffled question. "Hey, are you okay?" A blinding flash of light erupted as my hand connected with something unseen, sending a jolt through me. My eyes were wide, my vision filled with the horrifying image of a child, blood staining their face, their eyes hollow with terror. "Please save me," the child whimpered, their small hands grasping at me. And then I was awake, startled by Yo Youngam's voice. I thrashed, heart pounding, the dream's terror still clinging to me.
"Are you all right?"
He was kneeling beside my bed, clearly worried by my sudden outburst. I sat up, trying to shake off the lingering unease, my gaze distant. "Just a rough dream, I guess," I murmured, though the child's plea still echoed in my mind. I knew deep down I had to find that child, and quickly. It had been 3 days since we arrived in Golden Immortal Village, and I was no closer to finding the artisan I needed. This place was bustling, filled with merchants and the distinct aroma of phoenix trees, but my target remained elusive. But if we were truly determined, I knew we would find them. Yo Youngam leaned in, his expression serious, telling me we were being tailed again. I simply smiled. The crowded market was the perfect place for a little misdirection. "Let's check the Eastern District," I said, already planning our next move. It had been 3 days in Golden Immortal Village, and my frustration was a knot tightening in my gut. Master Yu Soak and Captain Yung Chung had got me here, but that was little comfort now. The artisan I sought remained a ghost, despite my relentless search. My eyes swept the bustling streets, every stall, every shadowed corner. This place pulsed with life, yet the answer I needed stayed just out of reach. Even the quietest alleys offered no clue. Everywhere, the distinctive phoenix trees stood tall, beautiful, but useless. But I couldn't give up, not yet. Just then, Yo Youngam leaned in, his expression tightening. He glanced subtly over his shoulder, a silent warning.
Young master, it seems we have a tale again.
I simply raised a hand to my chin, a small smile playing on my lips. The marketplace was a chaotic sea of people, perfect cover for us and our unwanted shadows. Yo Youngam, still clutching his candied fruit, seemed to agree. Then let's go check asterisk that area out today, I said, pointing towards a different section of the market.
Wait up there. Didn't you say we were going to the other side of the village? He stammered, utterly bewildered.
I just kept moving, leaving him to scramble after me, still processing my abrupt decision. We finally made it a short distance away, and he caught up, looking utterly confused. I turned to him, a knowing look on my face. Why do you think we suddenly took off? I asked. His eyes widened. So you knew too. He looked genuinely shocked, while I just smirked internally.
So what? I replied, my voice dry, almost deadpan.
My steps were light and precise, a testament to the rigorous training I'd been undergoing. I focused inward, channeling the raw yin energy through my meridians, a silent, powerful hum beneath my skin. It wasn't yet enough to truly dominate, but it was one step closer, a tangible improvement in my control. I remembered the technique, a profound method for accumulating yin energy that Yu Soak had shown me. It was called the Supreme, a direct and potent way to draw power. Yu Soak had told me, once mastered, I could do incredible things with it. Things like this. He demonstrated it once, casually manifesting a shimmering, crystalline orb of pure energy in his palm. And now I held a similar, smaller sphere, pulsating with purple light.
Still only this much, But even this should be enough.
My gaze sharpened, noticing a figure moving furtively through the crowded market. He was quick, subtle, slipping past the bustling villagers like a ghost. I watched as he deftly snatched a pouch from an unsuspecting, grateful man. But before the pickpocket could vanish, I moved, a blur of motion, throwing the energy orb with pinpoint precision. The orb struck him hard, sending him sprawling to the ground, his body hitting the dirt with a loud thud. He lay there, stunned and disoriented, groaning softly as the shock of impact rippled through him. I extended my hand, the stolen pouch now safely in my grasp, offering it back to the grateful man. The grateful man snatched his pouch back, his face a mixture of relief and disbelief.
Thank you very much. Oh, thank you.
Looking at the dazed pickpocket, I simply stated that the constables were on their way, giving him his cue. The pickpocket, wide-eyed and terrified, scrambled to his feet and bolted, disappearing into the crowd. I watched him go, a faint smile on my face, the golden light of my energy still lingering on my hands. The grateful man, still reeling, stared at me, then at the spot where the pickpocket had been, a bewildered expression on his face. His movement had been unique, humble in a way, yet remarkably effective. It was something I'd need to consider.
Father.
Then a small voice pierced the street noise, calling out a single familiar word, Father. A moment later, 2 small children barreled towards me, wide smiles on their faces, arms outstretched. They threw themselves into what they clearly believed was their father's embrace.
I froze. This was unexpected, and most definitely not my children.
The children, still beaming, looked up at me with bright, expectant eyes. I just stood there, utterly bewildered, as they tugged at my robes. My guards and I kept our distance, observing the humble home from the street, watching the figures inside. I wondered if this truly was the doll artisan I'd been searching for, the one who held the key to a missing piece of my plans. A moment later, Gong Dui emerged, looking utterly exhausted but offering a small, apologetic bow.
You must have waited a long time. I don't have anything to offer you.
Meet Gong Dui, a doll artisan Sioho is searching for. I simply smiled, holding out the small pouch of coins I'd prepared. He took the pouch with a hesitant, grateful look. My personal guard, Yo Youngem, placed a small, polished wooden tray on the low table.
Gong Dui, thank you again.
He looked at the tray, then back at me, still a little bewildered. Then, with a gentle hand, he gestured towards the two small children playing behind him, a flicker of pride in his weary eyes.
The eldest, my son, is Gong Mil, and my daughter is Gong Ray.
I took a moment to observe them, my eyes lingering on the intricate toy Gong Mil held. Gong Dui's smile faltered, a hint of sadness in his eyes as he looked at his children. Not at all. Compared to me, who's just a common merchant, you are far more admirable. Raising two children as a father, that takes true strength. I watched the children, noticing the simple toys they played with in the dirt. But then my gaze sharpened. One toy in particular caught my eye. It was a small wooden cart, meticulously crafted, with a subtle movement I recognized. My eyes widened slightly. "And what about that?" I asked, pointing to the toy Gong Mil held. Gong Mil, beaming with pride, held it up for me to see. It was a tiny, intricately carved bird, its wings subtly fluttering. This toy, it was once popular among wealthy children, I mused aloud, a new thought forming. I barely whispered, did this child, Gong Mil, truly craft something so intricate? A spark ignited within me, a recognition of something far beyond mere child's play. Impressive, I declared, a genuine smile spreading across my face as I looked at Gong Dui.
He has, Gong Dui beamed, his pride in his son clear for all to see, and Gong Ray clapped with delight.
Gong Mil, still holding his bird, looked up at me, an innocent question in his eyes.
Look, he chirped, offering me a different wooden figure, a simple doll crafted with surprising care.
Just as I thought, I murmured, taking the doll, my mind already racing with the implications of his skill. I gently pressed on the doll, feeling for the subtle give, confirming my theory. With a slight push, a small hidden mechanism within the doll sprang to life. It was a simple trick, yes, but one that required precision and ingenuity to execute perfectly. The secret, I realized, was the subtle force generated from a fish bladder hidden inside. This child, Gong Mil, possessed a rare talent, a natural gift for intricate mechanisms that went far beyond his years. This wasn't just a toy, it was a blueprint for a future I could build. Gong Mil, with his unassuming innocence, was holding the key to immense wealth, and he didn't even know it. I explained to Gong Dui that his son's innate skill was nothing short of a gift from the heavens. I gently patted Gong Mil's head, the boy still beaming with pride, oblivious to the grand future I was proposing. Gong Dui stared at me, his eyes wide with disbelief, the word money echoing in his mind. This talent, I told him, was not just a hobby. It was a skill that could bring in great wealth. I laid out my proposal, a contract that would see him and his son work with me, and in return, I would offer him 40% of all earnings. Gong Dui's jaw dropped, speechless at the sheer generosity of the offer. I gave him time, telling him I would return the next day or the day after to hear his decision. As my guards and I departed, I knew I had planted a powerful seed of opportunity. Meanwhile, in a different corner of the village, Warrior Ah reported to the shadowy figure. Their attempt to collect Gong Dui's monthly tribute had failed. My guards had intercepted their operative. I laid the contract between us, a simple scroll that held the promise of everything. Gong Dui stared, his eyes wide with a mix of disbelief and a fragile spark of hope. I reiterated the offer, work with his son, Gong Mil, and I would give him an unheard of 40% of the earnings. He was still processing the numbers, his brow furrowed in a deep, complicated thought. 40%.
40%.
His hands clenched, then relaxed, his gaze glued to the contract as if it might simply vanish. I knew it was more than generous. It was an offer that would redefine their entire lives. I decided to give him the space he needed to truly consider it. I told him I would return tomorrow or the day after to hear his decision. With that, my guards and I turned to leave, allowing Master Gong the quiet he so clearly needed. My steps were resolute. I had found my artisan. My guards and I were gone, but the shadows in Golden Immortal Village were just beginning to stir. Far away, in a dimly lit room, Warrior Ah stood before the cloaked, hunched, shadowy figure, his report already on the tip of his tongue. The shadowy figure listened with a cold, almost predatory stillness, a silent promise of trouble. A vein pulsed in the shadowy figure's temple, a silent indicator of his growing displeasure.
So I heard you failed to retrieve Master Gong's monthly tribute. Just like...
The guy entrusted with the job ended up getting caught by Seoho's guards.
The shadowy figure clasped his hands, the weight of his thoughts almost visible in the air.
Have you figured out why that brat came all the way here?
Warrior Ah, still rattled by my guards, shifted nervously. But I did hear something else, he murmured, a new thread of information. Gong Dui's supposed benefactor hadn't left empty-handed after my visit. The shadowy figure's eyes narrowed, a cold glint appearing in their depths. Was I trying to poach their artisan, or was this a deeper betrayal? Then a new, more sinister thought seemed to strike him. And what of him? Can he truly be trusted? The air in the room grew heavy, thick with unspoken accusations, and the chilling weight of a brewing storm. Under the pale moonlight, a small, quiet house in Golden Immortal Village seemed to hold a secret. I couldn't shake the doll maker, Gong Dui, from my mind. Just thinking about his ingenuity and the potential of his children made me smile. I had offered him a contract, a bold proposition for a man like him. It was a big step for both of us. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit room, the shadowy figure was deep in thought, suspicion clouding his mind. He commanded his subordinate, Warrior Ah, to investigate my presence in Golden Immortal Village. Warrior Ah, grim-faced, acknowledged the order and departed into the night, determined to uncover my intentions. Back at his home, Gong Dui was still awake, his children Gong Mil and Gong Rei asleep beside him. A glimmer of gold caught his eye, the ingot I had given him for his family's expenses. Suddenly, a menacing group of thugs burst through his door, their expressions dark and threatening.
Who's here at this hour?
His eyes widened, a wave of confusion washing over him.
Looks like you're still awake. No matter how tempting money might be, how could you lay hands on the merchant group's property?
Who's here at this hour?
Looks like you're still awake. Master Gong. No matter how tempting money might be, how could you lay hands on the merchant group's property?
What are you talking about?
His face contorted in disbelief, unable to fathom the accusation. The thugs shook their heads in mock disappointment, claiming they hadn't expected him to stoop to such acts. Gong Dui's wife, drawn by the commotion, appeared in the doorway, her voice trembling as she asked what they meant by running away in the middle of the night. One of the thugs stepped forward, sneering as he pointed to the ingot, claiming it belonged to the Hazel Oak Merchant Group, a rival I knew all too well. Gong Dui's wife, her face etched with terror, clutched her children, her gaze fixed on her husband. Gong Dui stared at the ingot in his hand, his mind racing for an explanation. He stammered, trying to explain that I, Seoho, had given it to him for household expenses just that morning. The thugs just laughed, demanding a promissory note, a contract proving he'd borrowed funds from the Hazel Oak Merchant Group. Gong Dui's face paled further. He had no such document. Gong Dui's face shows an expression of concern, and he seems to be in the middle of a sentence, though what he's saying isn't revealed.
Sir H. Wang, what is the meaning of this?
Gong Dui's wife is shown with a terrified expression, reaching out, her mouth open as if screaming. Gong Mil is shown in close-up, her face expressing fear as a hand reaches towards her.
You kids stay here.
We'll be back soon.
A thug is seen in midair, having been struck, with Gong Mil and Gong Rei visible below him. Gong Mil is seen clinging to her brother, her face pressed against him in fear.
Kuog.
Gong Rei is shown lying on the ground, seemingly knocked back by the force of the fight. He moved like a shadow, striking down another attacker with effortless, brutal efficiency. The remaining thugs stood frozen, staring at their fallen comrades, their bravado evaporating in the face of such overwhelming skill. Yo Young-am stood tall, his presence radiating an undeniable aura of protection that instantly put the fear of God into them. It was then that I stepped into the doorway, my expression calm, observing the chaos that had just unfolded. My gaze fell on Gong Mil, who was still cradling her younger brother, her small face streaked with tears, but her eyes fixed on me. The thugs, recovering from their shock, scrambled to their feet, their leader now looking at me with a mix of fear and confusion. I met his gaze, my voice steady, letting him know that I knew exactly who had sent them and why. I revealed my knowledge of the rival merchant group's involvement and the shadowy figures plotting, leaving no doubt that their scheme had been thoroughly exposed. Then, in a sickening flash, the thug leader lunged, snatching Gong Mil, dragging her away from her terrified father. His fist drew back, aimed straight for Gong Dui, who could only watch in horror as his child was manhandled. But before the blow could land, a blur of movement, Yo Young-am was there, a silent guardian, his hand already on the thug leader's arm. Gong Mil dropped, and the thug leader's face contorted in pain as Yo Young-am twisted his arm with effortless precision. With a quick, decisive strike, Yo Young-am sent the brute sprawling, then turned his calm, assessing gaze to the remaining thugs. The other thugs, moments ago so confident, now hesitated, their bravado crumbling in the face of Yo Young-am's quiet strength. Yo Young-am moved like a ghost, weaving through their clumsy attacks, deflecting blows and striking with surgical precision. Each thug he touched crumpled to the ground, unconscious, their bodies piled like sacks of grain. The thug leader, the only one left standing, stared wide-eyed, utterly dumbfounded by the display of martial artistry. I stepped forward, my voice cutting through the stunned silence.
From this moment forward, Gong Dui and his children are under the protection of my merchant house.
The thug leader's face went pale. He had clearly underestimated the reach of our influence. He stared at me, then at his defeated men, a cold sweat breaking out on his brow. His eyes darted around, searching for an escape, but there was nowhere to run. With a grimace, he gestured to his men, a silent order to retreat. They scrambled away, humiliated and bruised, disappearing into the night. Gong Dui, still shaking, rushed forward and knelt before me, his gratitude spilling out in choked words.
Master Seoho, I will repay this kindness with every fiber of my being.
He pledged his loyalty, promising to work tirelessly for the merchant house, his voice thick with emotion. I simply nodded, my gaze falling on Gong Mil, who was bravely trying to comfort her little brother, Gong Ray. Yo Young-am, ever observant, stood beside me, a subtle nod acknowledging the child's resilience. Gong Mil, despite the terror she just endured, held her head high, her eyes still sharp and intelligent. It was clear that even in crisis, her ingenuity and spirit shone through. I knew then that my decision to invest in this family, and particularly in her talents, was not only sound but essential. Gong Dui, his face a canvas of awe and profound relief, bowed deeply to me.
No matter what, I'll work hard and I'll pay it all back.
I simply smiled, a quiet affirmation that his words were all I needed. My gaze then drifted, searching for the child who had shown such unexpected bravery. I found Gong Mil, still looking a little shaken, and gently patted her head. She flinched slightly, her wide eyes still holding a hint of the fear she'd just endured. Yo Young-am watched the exchange, a subtle nod of approval on his face for the girl's resilience. I gently placed my hand on Gong Mil's head, trying to reassure the child after the chaos.
Mil, I'm sorry.
Gong Mil looked up at me, still a little wide-eyed from the ambush.
As if I'd exploit you for profit.
I explained that I needed their skills, not to take advantage, but to build something together. Gong Dui, who had been listening intently, reached out and clasped my hand, a silent agreement passing between us. Meanwhile, Yo Young-am received a quiet warning from head escort Guak about a dangerous martial master from a rival merchant group. With the contract settled and a new alliance formed, I prepared to depart, Go Ilpyeong standing ready by my side.
Silver Wind Squad Leader, Go Ilpyeong at your service, Master.
Moments later, we found Hwang Garyong, the thug leader, casually holding a golden ingot, as if he hadn't just tried to ruin Gong Dui's life. I offered him a chance to confess, to resolve things civilly. But Hwang Garyong just scoffed, feigning ignorance with an arrogant tilt of his head. Head escort Guak's voice cut through the tension, a low warning meant for Yo Youngam. He leaned in close, sharing a crucial piece of information, a secret that could mean life or death. Yo Youngam acknowledged him with a quiet thank you, his expression grim.
Be cautious of a martial master from the Hazel Oak Merchant Group, head escort Guak whispered. People say he's known as Byung. He stressed the importance of vigilance. In the Murim, you must never let your guard down.
Yo Youngam simply bowed, accepting the warning, promising to prepare for his training later. Then, a flash of light burst from the door as I pushed it open, a signal that it was time to move. Let's go, I commanded, striding forward with my entire escort team, Go Ilpyeong right behind me. A new chapter was beginning. We found Hwang Garyong still smirking, clutching that same golden ingot he'd been so desperate to steal from Gong Mill. He was still trying to peddle the lie that Gong Mill had stolen 100 gold coins from him. I watched as he held it out, a gaudy display of his fabricated grievance, as if the mere sight of it would convince anyone.
Wait, Hwang Garyong sputtered, panic finally cracking his arrogant facade as he grasped my implication.
Meet Hwang Garyong, a thug leader who tried to steal from Gong Dui. He offered me the document, a pathetic attempt to make it all vanish if I just agreed, but I saw the subtle tremor in his hand. Before I could even speak, head escort Guak landed a swift, brutal strike to Hwang Garyong's face, sending blood spraying.
While he's speaking, you better listen, head escort Guak growled, his voice a low rumble of warning.
Hwang Garyong clutched his nose, a pained whimper escaping his lips.
I calmly reminded him of my earlier words, about resolving things like civilized people, my tone completely at odds with the violence that had just unfolded. Hwang Garyong looked up, blood staining his chin, his eyes wide with a mixture of pain and disbelief. My men moved in, swiftly and efficiently apprehending the remaining thugs, their movements precise and practiced.
You're doing this just for that reason, Hwang Garyong screamed, clearly distraught and confused by my actions.
I simply responded that I honestly didn't even know what he was talking about, feigning ignorance to further disorient him. Hwang Garyong tried to lunge forward, a desperate, futile attempt to retaliate. But before he could even take a step, my men intercepted him, their grip firm and unyielding, effectively ending his resistance. My men tightened their hold, forcing Hwang Garyong to his knees, utterly subdued. He thrashed against their grip, a desperate, pathetic struggle. Even in defeat, Hwang Garyong couldn't resist a final, venomous shout at Gong Dui, who merely looked on with a dry, knowing gaze. One of Hwang Garyong's thugs, now beaten and bloodied, started begging for forgiveness, claiming he hadn't known the full extent of their leader's scheme. He pleaded with me, a broken man, to spare the children and forgive their actions. My men hauled the whimpering thug to his feet, his face a mess of blood and tears. I held up the ledger, a silent testament to the crimes he now confessed. The other thugs, witnessing their comrade's broken spirit, looked on defeated. Hwang Garyong himself was thrown to the ground, a final act of humiliation. He landed with a thud, utterly powerless now. My foot came down on his chest, a decisive end to his resistance. The entire group of thugs was now completely subdued, their ambush a spectacular failure. My foot came down on his chest, a decisive end to his resistance. The entire group of thugs lay subdued, their ambush a spectacular failure. A small piece of wood, likely from the bamboo pole that struck Hwang Garyong, clattered to the ground near my boot. I leaned forward, my voice cutting through the suddenly quiet air.
So who wants to get beat up first?
I watched the thugs, their eyes wide with fear, knowing the real interrogation was about to begin.
Hwang Garyong.
I paused, letting my gaze sweep over the defeated gang, before continuing, my tone chillingly calm.
I've heard quite a bit about you these last few days. Everything.
You're...
I just smiled, a thin, knowing curve of my lips, as I delivered the final, biting insult.
You're also a problem for your employers, I imagine. Business partners will probably back off just from your face. That con-looking beard of yours really helps.
Oh, right, you little.
My words had struck a nerve, and Hwang Garyong lunged, but it was a futile gesture. My men were already moving. I gave the direct order, leaving no room for hesitation. Capture that bastard. Then, from the shadows, a figure moved with a flash of steel. It was one of my hidden allies, blade glinting, ready to strike. The remaining thugs, emboldened by their leader, tried to put up a fight. But my men, well-trained and efficient, moved to subdue them, their movements swift and decisive. One by one, the thugs were overwhelmed, their resistance crumbling. I watched, satisfied, as the situation came completely under our control. It was a clean operation, just as I'd planned. It's been a while, I murmured, assessing the subdued thugs. Go Ilpyeong, ever reliable, confirmed the job was done, securing the last of the resistance. My gaze fell on Hwang Garyong, now completely at our mercy, and I knew my plan had worked perfectly. My men moved like a storm, a blur of blades and practiced precision. Every strike was meant to disable, to secure, not to end a life. The last of them fell, and one of my men, swift as a shadow, confirmed it. The job was done. Hwang Garyong lay there, utterly defeated, his earlier bravado a distant memory. I leaned in, a cool smile touching my lips, recalling his initial charade.
We talk.
His subordinate, now free, scrambled away from his humiliated leader, eager to disappear. I took a moment, savoring the complete and utter subjugation of Hwang Garyong and his men.
Looking for me.
My words hung in the air, a direct challenge to his flimsy lie about Gong Mill. I watched him, waiting for the truth to finally, inevitably, surface. My training with the shadowy figure was a relentless blur, constantly defensive, barely keeping pace with his lightning-fast attacks.
Are you not feeling the shifts immediately? He pressed, his voice a low growl.
I twisted away from another strike, the blade whistling past my ear, but the exertion tore a harsh cough from my chest. He paused, explaining my unique yin energy wasn't just for attack, but for detection. It would sense malevolent intentions. My unsettling discomfort, he clarified, was merely my energy reacting to dark intent, a crucial advantage. The shadowy figure then described higher mastery, promising an ability that would make me virtually untouchable. He urged me to continue, to forge this energy into a weapon surpassing any blade. And I could feel it, a subtle improvement in my perception, a fraction of a second gained in anticipating his moves. Then, without warning, he unleashed a single, blindingly fast sword strike, a blur impossible to follow. His speed was inhuman, his internal energy a terrifying force. I found myself dodging multiple attacks, a frantic dance of survival, barely a hair's breadth from being struck. The shadowy figure, seeing my evasive maneuvers, seemed genuinely surprised I was already anticipating his attacks. He told me a first-rate martial artist, at the peak realm, could lead a small sect, and countless aspired to that level. The shadowy figure then described what it truly meant to be at the peak realm, hinting at a power far beyond my imagination. He let out a booming laugh, a rare display of unrestrained amusement.
If all you're doing is avoiding death, you'll never improve. You're only wasting your time.
He moved with incredible speed, a blur of motion, launching a flurry of attacks I could barely perceive.
You'll have nothing but regret.
He wasn't holding back. Each strike hummed with immense, terrifying energy, the air crackling around us. The force of his attacks was immense, a cascade of impacts that shook the very ground beneath me.
Oh.
Despite the searing pain, I pushed myself up, my gaze locking onto his, refusing to break. I prepared myself, knowing that the real training, the true test, had only just begun. The shadowy figure watched me, his expression unreadable, as I tried to recover from the brutal training.
I thought you were just some flailing brat, he admitted, a rare smirk playing on his lips. Turns out you've got some real skills.
He clutched at his chest, a gesture I'd seen him make before, as if something within him was reacting to my progress.
You must survive in order to truly grow, he declared, his voice firm, echoing the harsh reality of our training.
I gritted my teeth, pushing past the pain, my entire body screaming in protest.
KUGH, I gasped, a wave of discomfort washing over me, almost blinding me.
This burning sensation, it was unlike anything I'd felt before, making my vision swim and my head ache. The shadowy figure, ever observant, saw my struggle and decided to offer a rare explanation. He revealed the true nature of my yin energy technique, a supreme art inspired by the mysterious depths of the winter sea.
The more you master it, he explained, the more you will feel this discomfort.
He clarified that this was not a weakness, but a unique detection ability, especially potent against those with impure or dark energy, like the ruthless dark faction.
When someone harbors killing intent, they can't hide it from your energy detection, he finished, a slight emphasis on the word advantage.
Then, with a sudden burst of power, the shadowy figure launched himself at me, his movements a blur of terrifying speed. He explained that at my current level, I'd mostly just feel uncomfortable, but this was the stage right before reaching the peak realm. Once I reached that point, I'd start to literally read my opponent's movements and positions. He urged me not to slack off in my training, promising that one day, my finely honed energy would become a weapon greater than any blade. And I could feel it, even if it was only a little. I managed to slightly anticipate his next move, a faint flicker of prescience I hadn't possessed before. It was because I had been training with him every single day, pushing my limits. But then, the shadowy figure executed a single, deceptively simple sword strike. It was so blindingly fast, a mere flash of light, that it left me reeling. My eyes widened in pure, unadulterated shock, sweat beading on my brow as I tried to process what I'd just seen. It was almost too fast for me to even comprehend. This guy's swordplay and his level of internal energy were simply on another plane entirely. Then the shadowy figure was upon me, his blade a blur, forcing me to dodge, my body screaming with every twist. I ducked and weaved, the wind of his attack stinging my skin, my breath ragged in my chest.
What do you think? Press harder. He moved with impossible grace, his sword a dark extension of his will, each strike aimed to test my limits. This side's in full panic mode.
Sir, let's get out now.
Over here and stop the injured from bleeding. Now.
I clutched at the wound, coughing, the effort of staying conscious a battle in itself.
Hey.
It's time to see if you can survive.
I pushed myself up, my body screaming in protest, but my gaze locked onto his, unyielding. It's time to wrap this up. This guy, he's been dodging all MY attacks as if he's predicting them.
The shadowy figure, his face twisted into a menacing grin, stared down at me. He moved, a blur of motion, and I barely managed to twist out of the way, my body screaming from the impact that still grazed me.
That was because I was holding back. Acknowledge your strength, Sioho.
He dramatically shifted his stance, his form radiating an intensity I hadn't felt from him before. In that instant, I knew. He had been holding back, playing with me, and only now was he truly unleashing his power. He lunged, a whirlwind of martial arts prowess, and the force of his attack was terrifying. The blow landed, a searing pain erupting through my chest, and I felt blood well up in my throat. I stumbled, coughing, my vision blurring, but I refused to fall.
I am testing your ability to survive, Sioho.
I pushed myself up, my body screaming in protest, but my gaze locked onto his, unyielding. He had unleashed his true power, and now I had to face it head-on. Then the shadowy figure moved, a blur of motion, kicking up dirt as he unleashed a torrent of martial arts. I scrambled backward, a sharp intake of breath as I barely dodged another lightning-fast strike. His cocky attitude had vanished, replaced by a ruthless intensity that left no room for error. This was the true power of his martial arts, raw and unforgiving. A searing pain ripped through my side as I was struck, and a cough brought blood to my lips. My hand lashed out, a blur of motion, sending Hwang Garyong's attack spiraling harmlessly into the air. He stumbled, caught off guard, his momentum betraying him as I moved with a speed he clearly hadn't anticipated. With a quick twist of my arm, I had him in a hold, his weapon arm pinned, his face inches from the dirt. Yo Youngem, my personal guard, stood ready, a silent sentinel, watching my every move with an approving eye. I leaned in, my voice low and steady, reminding Hwang Garyong of the power I held over him, both literally and figuratively. He was beaten, utterly defeated, his defiance replaced by a desperate, pleading expression. He stared up at me, his eyes wide with fear, a stark contrast to his earlier arrogance. A single drop of sweat rolled down his temple, a testament to the sudden, brutal end of his bluster.
How much can you give me?
The words were barely out of his mouth when a dark, cloaked figure materialized behind him, a chilling presence in the clearing. Then, just as quickly, the birds scattered into the sky, startled by a sound I couldn't quite place. The shadowy figure, my master, stood over Hwang Garyong, his hand outstretched, a sinister aura radiating from him. His chilling calm broke the silence, telling Hwang Garyong he looked like a lost child, and if he didn't wish to remain so.
Why don't you come with me?
Hwang Garyong's face was a mask of fear, his mouth agape, as the shadowy figure's hand reached closer, dark energy swirling around his fingers. And then, with a horrifying crunch, the shadowy figure's hand closed around Hwang Garyong's neck, a silent, brutal act.
Why are you doing this?
The shadowy figure answered, simply, that his client had asked him to, and Hwang Garyong, desperate, immediately offered to pay more. Hwang Garyong's face was a mix of terror and avarice, clearly willing to sacrifice anything for his life.
How much can you give me? How much can you give me? I told you not to use martial arts against the weak.
If you intend to keep going down this path, get out of my sight. Don't ever appear in front of me again. Hey, monk. I was born on the Strets, and this is all I've learned. Is it so wrong to make a living with violence? Your martial arts have no value and no soul because your fists only act upon greed. One day, you will learn what I mean. You didn't know how scary the world could be, because you've been the one beating people up until now, huh? Even some back alleyway merchants that don't know martial arts can work together to fight back, you fucker. Don't be too sad when you're in hell, all right? This is all just karma.
Before he could even flinch, I struck. My fist connected with a sickening crunch. Using martial arts against the weak was a foolish endeavor, I told him. He crumpled, utterly defeated. Then a hand reached out, tapping him lightly.
Ooh, impressive. The shadowy figure's voice cut through the silence.
The shadowy figure, in that same calm, unnerving voice, declared Hwang Garyong had been getting on his nerves and offered me a job. Hwang Garyong, sprawled on the ground, looked up at the shadowy figure, a flicker of desperate hope in his eyes.
How much can you give me?
He thought back on his entire life, a life driven by the raw, unyielding desire for wealth and power. But the shadowy figure made no offer.
As if I'd die in a place like this.
Instead, an emerald dragon of pure energy erupted from the shadowy figure, tearing into Hwang Garyong with devastating force. Hwang Garyong screamed, his body contorting under the immense pressure. The attack continued, a relentless assault that twisted his very form. His body was ripped apart by sheer power, a whirlwind of light and force. The dragon's energy consumed him, leaving nothing but a fading glow. I watched as Hwang Garyong was utterly obliterated, a chilling display of the shadowy figure's true might.
It went in, now.
The shadowy figure stood over the spot where Hwang Garyong had been, his cloak swirling. Die, Hwang Garyong screamed, his voice filled with venom. But before the serpent could strike, a shimmering blue energy blade sliced through its neck, dissipating the monstrous form into dust. Hwang Garyong's eyes widened in disbelief as the attack he thought was decisive vanished. I launched myself forward, my fist crackling with a cold blue light. Your martial arts have no value and no soul because your fists only act upon greed. My fist glowed with raw power, ready to strike.
One day, you will learn what I mean.
Hwang Garyong's face, a moment ago so confident, was now contorted in fear. I unleashed a devastating punch, the blue energy blasting him backwards. He crumpled to the ground, utterly defeated. He screamed as he fell, the force of my blow sending him sprawling across the ground. Blood splattered from his mouth, his face a mask of agony. I stood over him, my hand still crackling with the blue energy of my yin technique. Then, from the shadows, the shadowy figure appeared, stepping casually over Hwang Garyong's prone body.
Thanks for the lesson, Tilda.
He looked at Hwang Garyong, then at me, a hint of amusement in his voice as he praised my effort.
Don't say that. I did it for my own sake, too.
I pulled a small, gleaming gold sicey from my pouch, holding it up for Gong Dui to see. It's a fake, as you can see. Gong Dui's eyes widened, his gaze fixed on the counterfeit. The captured thugs, still bound, began to clamor, realizing their employer's deception was now laid bare. I simply watched them, a quiet satisfaction settling over me. I told him any merchant could fight back, not just with money, but with the raw will to protect what was theirs. Gong Dui listened, a dawning realization on his face that I was more than just a young master. Our contract was finalized, an alliance forged, yet I knew he still suspected deeper currents running beneath my calm exterior. Days later, I was back in the secluded training ground, pushing myself against the shadowy figure's relentless assault. He moved like a phantom, a blur of speed, forcing me to react on pure instinct alone. Each blow was precise, designed to test my limits, to expose the cracks in my burgeoning strength. I tried to counter, to find an opening, but his defense was an impenetrable wall of focused power. Then the shadowy figure launched a crushing kick, aimed directly for my chest. I barely managed to block, the impact jolting through me, staggering me with its sheer force. He began to lecture, his voice calm, explaining that true martial arts was not about dominating others, but understanding one's own power. He pushed me harder, faster, until my senses blurred, the world dissolving into a disorienting haze. Suddenly, I was no longer in the training ground, but face to face with a younger, frailer version of myself. My past self stared back, a mirror of the helplessness I once felt, the crushing weight of my old weakness. But this time, I wouldn't just stand there. I would shatter that suffocating memory. My return to the merchant house, with Yo Youngam by my side, was met with a chorus of relief and admiration. The Jiangxi expedition had been a resounding success, a fact that settled deep within me with quiet satisfaction. Mr. Zhang, his face a mixture of disbelief and awe, could barely contain his astonishment at my first true journey. Even Yon Dami, usually so composed, paused her bath to reflect on the profitable trade deal I'd secured. Go Ilpiang and Yon Dami found themselves discussing the sheer magnitude of our new trade deal, their expressions still full of impressed wonder. I took a moment to review my agenda, a small smile touching my lips as I saw the tangible results of my efforts. Despite the accolades, my commitment to daily training remained unwavering. Soon, I was back in the training grounds, my focus absolute as I immersed myself in the rigorous martial arts regimen. The shadowy figure, as always, observed my every move, a thoughtful expression hidden beneath his hood. He often reflected on the myriad motivations that drove people to pursue martial arts, a philosophical musing I sensed he was applying to me. Then his question cut through the silence, direct and probing. What was my reason for training? My answer was simple, delivered with a determined look that left no room for doubt. I explained to the shadowy figure that my purpose was to protect the people I cared about, to prevent the tragedies I'd already lived through once before. My master looked at me, a thoughtful expression on his face, before a subtle smile touched his lips. He nodded, a silent approval of my resolve, and I knew then that my answer had satisfied him. The shadowy figure then took a deep, centering breath, preparing to introduce a new phase of my training. He raised his hand, gesturing to an unseen point, and began to speak of the sword. He declared that he would teach me a new sword technique, one he called the snowfall blade. My master explained how the technique mirrored the dual nature of snow itself, at times soft and light, at others boundless and heavy. He emphasized that it was a technique of swiftness and sharpness, capable of cutting through anything. Then he demonstrated, a blur of motion as his blade moved with impossible speed and precision, the snowfall blade coming alive in his hands. I watched, awestruck, then gripped my own sword, determined to replicate the complex, fluid movements. I began to practice, my focus absolute, my mind replaying every detail of his demonstration. The shadowy figure watched me intently, assessing my every move, his gaze unwavering. My journey to Jiangxi was a resounding success. Returning to the merchant house, I felt a deep satisfaction at the profitable deals I'd secured. Mr. Zhang, usually so composed, could barely contain his astonishment at the rare spirit herbs I'd acquired. He double-checked the characteristics, his eyes wide with disbelief. I confirmed their authenticity, and the look on his face was priceless. He just laughed, a sound of pure, unadulterated shock. "I can hardly believe it," he said, shaking his head. "To think he'd return from his very first journey with such incredible finds." Go Ilpyeong and Yon Dami were equally impressed, their discussions filled with praise for the profitable trade deal. Later, I reviewed my achievements, a faint smile touching my lips as I marked off another completed task. "Phew, that's done," I murmured, my hand still holding the brush. I had managed everything I set out to do. Despite the success, my mind was already moving to the next item on my agenda. My promise to myself and to the shadowy figure was still paramount. Yo Youngem greeted me, a silent nod of recognition for the success of our journey. My personal guard, ever vigilant, stood by my side as we returned, a testament to the safety and success of our expedition. Yet, even with success, my mind was already on my next task, my promise to the shadowy figure still paramount. It was time to begin training. I focused on my stance, the familiar burn in my muscles, a welcome reminder of my commitment. The shadowy figure watched from a distance, his presence a silent challenge.
"What do you truly seek from martial arts?" my master asked, his voice cutting through the silence.
He observed my every move, his eyes dissecting my form. He then turned, looking out, as if pondering the myriad reasons people chose this path. Some sought fame, others wealth. Some simply found joy in the art itself. But very occasionally, he mused, there were those who sought power for revenge. He looked at me, his gaze unblinking, waiting for my answer. And I gave it, my expression unwavering.
To protect the people I care about.
That was my reason, my true, unwavering reason. The shadowy figure just stared at me for a long moment. Then a soft, almost imperceptible chuckle escaped him. He was satisfied.
"Starting today, I'll formally teach you sword techniques."
A sword? In my past life, I'd focused solely on raw physical strength, but this time, I knew a sword would be quicker, more efficient.
"It's called the snowfall blade."
He explained that it was a technique inspired by the very nature of snow itself. Soft and light, like a child's hair, yet capable of unimaginable power. Then, just as quickly, the technique shifted, becoming like a blizzard itself, heavy and boundless, filling the air with its immense weight. And then, with a snap, it was swift and sharp, mimicking the cutting edge of a raging snowstorm. The shadowy figure demonstrated, and the air around him shimmered with cold light, snowflakes dancing in the wake of his invisible blade. He moved with breathtaking speed, a whirlwind of force, each movement precise and devastating. I watched, mesmerized, as the ground cracked and splintered under the unseen impact of his technique. The power was immense, yet controlled, a terrifying display of martial mastery. He was like a god of winter, conjuring storms with a flick of his wrist. Then, in a flash, multiple blade-like projections of ice appeared, shimmering with deadly light. They hovered in the air, each one sharp enough to slice through steel, radiating a chilling aura. He explained that this was the snowfall blade, not just a swing of the sword, but a technique that could manifest power wherever its essence touched. I took a deep breath, clutching my own blade tighter, already feeling the daunting challenge ahead. This wasn't just about strength. It was about understanding, about becoming one with the very concept of snow. My training continued, pushing me to my absolute limits, but I knew every drop of sweat was worth it. I focused on replicating the snowfall blade, trying to capture its deceptive lightness and sudden, crushing weight. The shadowy figure watched, a silent, unreadable observer, as I pushed my body and mind to their breaking point. I gasped, my muscles screaming in protest, but I refused to give in. This was harder than anything I'd ever faced, a dance between brute force and ethereal grace. But as I moved, something clicked, a flicker of understanding, a new connection to the flow of the blade. My master, the shadowy figure, pushed me harder than ever, a blur of terrifying power. He stood there, radiating oppressive blue energy, his eyes glowing red like embers, a true master of the blade. But I met his onslaught head-on, my own energy rising, refusing to yield.
Damn it, did I make it too obvious?
He let out a short, almost disbelieving laugh, a sound I'd never heard from him before. Then, his intense gaze fixed on me, a new kind of appraisal in his eyes. His words were unexpected, a compliment I hadn't dared to hope for.
Such talent.
Coming from him, it meant more than any honorific, a true recognition of my progress.
From today onward, we'll train you with a method on an entirely different level.
A harsh and rigorous method.
I pushed through the final stretches of training, my body screaming, but my mind fixed on the shadowy figure's techniques. He watched, unreadable as ever, until finally, he stopped me with a simple gesture. My master, the shadowy figure, conceded that my innate talent was beyond anything he'd ever seen, declaring I would one day be called perfect. A rare compliment, but I knew his words held a deeper meaning, a true recognition of the power I now wielded. Back in the rhythm of my daily life, my schedule was a relentless cycle. Martial arts at night, then financial documents, the craft shop, and recruiting for the woodworking shop. I remembered my past self, unable to secure a contract with Gong Dui, an artisan whose skill was unmatched, and a man I desperately needed to ally with. Stepping into his workshop, the familiar jingle of the bell announced my presence.
Are you here about something in particular?
I gave her my most mature smile, deciding that being underestimated by a child wasn't the worst way to start a negotiation. I introduced myself properly, stating my purpose to her father, the artisan Gong Dui, who emerged from the back. I proposed a contract, laying out my terms with confidence, determined to secure the alliance that had eluded me in my previous life. Gong Dui listened intently, his expression unreadable, as I explained the full scope of my offer. Gong Dui held my gaze, his expression unreadable, waiting. I met his stare, determined to convey the truth of my intentions.
The reason I came was to form a contract with you.
He considered my words, his eyes narrowing slightly in thought. A long moment passed as he weighed my proposal. My schedule, a relentless list of duties, now had a crucial new entry, securing Gong Dui's alliance. Then, the scene shifted abruptly to a dimly lit woodworking shop in a past memory.
What brings you here? Gong Dui's younger self asked, his voice tinged with a weariness I now recognized.
A young merchant, Woojin, stood before him, looking nervous. He was trying to make a deal, just as I was now, but the past version of myself had failed. But then the memory twisted, turning dark. Woojin on the ground, fatally wounded, his blood staining the earth. Jiangho, Woojin's superior, cradled him, screaming for help that would never arrive in time. My daily schedule was punishing. Morning martial arts, a mountain of administrative duties, managing the shop, reviewing finances, then more martial arts at night. It was a demanding life, a constant grind, but I knew it was the only way to protect what mattered. And so, I arrived at the woodworking shop, ready to tackle another crucial task.
Wow.
Gong Mil, Gong Dui's young daughter, stared at me, her eyes wide, then blurted out that I wouldn't grow any taller if I kept eating like that. I just stood there, a grown man in a child's body, listening to a literal child lecture me on my growth. I took a deep breath and reminded her that I was Master Sioho, the youngest master of a great merchant house, not some wayward child she needed to feed. With her momentarily stunned into silence, I stepped fully into the workshop, ready to conduct my business. Gong Dui, the artisan I had come to see, turned, his gaze falling on me with a mixture of surprise and curiosity. He asked what brought me to his humble workshop, a question I was more than prepared to answer. I told him I was here to offer a contract, a partnership that would benefit us both. He looked from me to the exquisite wooden doll I'd brought, a piece I knew he would appreciate. And that's when Gong Dui, the artisan, picked up the doll I'd brought him. He turned it over in his hands, examining every detail, every curve of the wood. His eyes, usually so guarded, widened slightly as he took in the craftsmanship. He ran his fingers along the delicate folds of its robe, a look of pure fascination on his face. The silence in the room stretched, broken only by the soft brush of his thumb against the smooth wood.
This is truly amazing. Beautiful. Isn't she just like a real woman?
I just stood there, watching him, as his daughter Gong Mil, ever the innocent, piped up. Hey, that's a little rude to say. Gong Dui ignored her, completely absorbed in the doll, mumbling about its kindness. He looked up at me then, a new light in his eyes, a respect that hadn't been there before. My plan had worked, the doll had opened the door I needed. Gong Dui's face split into a wide grin, the kind of laugh that filled the entire workshop. Even his daughter, Gong Mil, couldn't help but smile, peeking out from behind him.
Oh my, to think, you already knew my preferences in advance.
I watched the two of them, the heavy weight of my past self's failure finally lifting. My success with Gong Dui was a stark contrast to another memory, a darker one, from a different time. I saw Jiangho, collapsed on the ground, cradling the fatally wounded Woojin.
Woojin, no.
Meet Jiangho, Woojin's superior in a past memory, filled with regret.
Is anyone there? A physician, call a physician. Someone, please.
Jiangho's face was etched with pure, agonizing regret, the memory a ghost in his eyes.
If only I had sent those guests away like Woojin advised. He wouldn't have died such a meaningless death.
He remembered Woojin's cheerful face that day, a chilling realization dawning on him. Woojin had known. Woojin's words, once dismissed, now echoed in Jiangho's mind like a chilling premonition he'd foolishly ignored. But I was oblivious, unaware that the shadowy figure was watching me from afar, a silent predator in the deepening shadows. He let out a soft sigh, a sound of contemplation rather than weariness. A subtle, almost imperceptible smile touched the corner of his lips. His eyes, sharp and calculating, remained fixed on my unsuspecting form. Yo Youngam, my personal guard, couldn't fathom why I'd chosen such a humble general store for elder brother's gift. But I knew the truth, this was no ordinary shop. Inside, the air was thick with forgotten stories and the scent of dried herbs. The ghost-masked constable, the proprietor, moved with a quiet efficiency that spoke of a past far grander than his present. Rumors said his eyes saw everything. This was the ghost-masked constable, a once feared hunter of criminals, now running a simple shop, yet radiating an undeniable presence. I was here partly out of curiosity, but mostly for something far more crucial. He watched me with an impassive face as I scanned his wares. My gaze landed on an unassuming item, hidden in plain sight. I pointed to it, a small, intricate piece. "How much is this?" I asked, holding it up.
"What?" Yo Youngam exclaimed, utterly bewildered.
The ghost masked constable simply handed it over, as if it were worthless. I tossed him a handful of coins, far more than enough.
Just take it.
He waved off the extra payment, a faint, knowing smile playing on his lips. He knew exactly what it was, didn't he? And he knew I knew. Back at the estate, I found elder brother preparing for the ceremony.
"Haha, thank you."
I held out the bracelet, explaining it wasn't merely an accessory. It was a concealed weapon. A flick of the wrist, and it would launch paralyzing needles, a small but potent defense against the flood of trouble I knew was coming. "Keep it on you always," I insisted. This was no ordinary gift. It was a shield against the unforeseen. He merely smiled, clearly underestimating the urgency in my voice, oblivious to the storm brewing. My personal guard, Yo Youngam, and I moved through the bustling streets, the morning light casting long shadows. We were headed to the main estate, where the air already hummed with anticipation for the succession ceremony. Elder brother Jiangho was already outside, looking busy as I approached him with Yo Youngam. He raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised to see me out so early, wondering what could possibly bring me to him. I explained I'd simply gone to a general store and, in passing, found something interesting. I pulled out a small, unassuming box, opening it to reveal a simple bracelet. Jiangho looked at it, a little confused, asking if it was just a bracelet. I clarified, infuse his internal energy, and it would fire thin, silver, paralyzing needles like arrows. I urged him to keep it on him, reminding him that we never truly know what life might throw our way. He just smiled, clearly underestimating the urgency in my voice, assuring me that Woojin, his aide, was always by his side. Despite his dismissive tone, I watched as he carefully put the bracelet on his wrist. I gave him one last look, a silent plea for caution, before turning to leave, my mind already on the impending ceremony and the flood of trouble I knew was coming. Elder brother, still looking a little baffled, finally mumbled his reluctant acceptance of the gift. I reminded him we'd meet again at the official banquet later that day. As I walked away, elder brother watched me go, his expression still a mixture of confusion and mild alarm.
"Warrior Woojin, did Seoho talk to you about anything?"
Then, the formal succession ceremony began, with a booming voice announcing the esteemed guests. The family patriarch, a man of imposing presence, stepped forward to address the gathered crowd. He raised his hand, his voice resonating through the grand hall as he prepared to make the momentous declaration.
I declare my eldest son, Jiangho, as the next leader of this merchant house.
Elder brother Jiangho stood tall, accepting the mantle of leadership with a solemn, determined look. The air crackled with anticipation and the hushed murmurs of the assembled guests. But then a subtle shift in the energy, a flicker of something sinister. I felt it instantly, a cold, predatory presence. There had to be an assassin hidden somewhere in the crowd. Damn it, too many faces, too many eyes. I couldn't scream a warning without triggering a stampede. What could I do? My mind raced, desperate for an answer. I scanned the crowd again, searching for any flicker of a clue. Then a mischievous thought struck me. I hadn't been paying enough attention to the female guests. A smirk played on my lips as I turned to elder brother. "Don't worry, elder brother," I whispered, leaning in. "I'll arrange matchmakers to line up outside your door."
"What?" he shrieked, nearly choking on his drink, his face a mask of pure horror. "Don't be like that," he pleaded, completely dismayed by my playful taunts.
He looked utterly flustered. My distraction was working perfectly. But even as I teased him, my eyes kept sweeping the crowd, my senses still screaming danger. Suddenly, Yo Youngam was at my side, a low murmur escaping him. He confirmed what I already knew. He could barely sense it, but the assassin was definitely here.
This is the 12th one. That's quite a few. So I should show them appropriate courtesy.
I just watched him, a slight smirk still playing on my lips. He let out a sigh, then turned to me.
Master, wait. I can barely sense the presence of.
Before anyone else could react, Yo Youngem moved, a blur of motion as he launched himself forward. He'd spotted her, a female figure among the guests, her arm already extended. The assassin, who had been waiting for her moment, was now directly in his path. Yo Youngem slammed into her, his hand seizing her wrist, twisting the threat away. The attack was thwarted, just as I had known it would be. That's the story so far. Subscribe to watch him rise.